Deep in the forests of Washington, fog blankets the ground like a ghostly shroud. Hidden among towering evergreens, ancient paths lead to villages forgotten by time. By day, the woods seem calm, serene, almost inviting. By night, the fog thickens. Figures move silently through deserted streets. Windows glow with lights that have no source. Whispers echo from the trees, calling names that have long been forgotten. Some travelers claim they saw children playing in the mist, their faces pale and eyes hollow. Others report sudden shadows appearing in alleyways, vanishing when approached. And in some villages, people enter but never leave. Tonight, we will journey through Washingtonia's most haunted forest villages, 25 locations where fog hides secrets, and the living are never truly alone. Greetings, my friends. Welcome to a journey into the foggy forests of Washington. These villages are not just abandoned places, they are resting grounds for spirits, and homes for memories too dark to leave behind. Every building, every twisted alley, every tree holds a story. Some stories tell of disappearances in the fog. Others speak of whispers that follow travelers from street to street. And some tell of figures glimpsed only in the corner of the eye, standing silently among the trees. Tonight, we will explore villages where every shadow could hide a soul unwilling to move on. Before we walk further into the mist, I want to ask you a question. If you stumbled upon a fog-covered village with lights in empty windows and whispers calling your name, would you venture inside? Or would you turn back and never look behind you? Now, prepare yourself. Let us step quietly into the most haunted forest villages in Washington. Mistwood Village lies hidden deep within the folds of the Cascade Mountains, perpetually wrapped in a thick, rolling fog. The village streets are narrow and winding, lined with timber-frame buildings that seem frozen in time. The silence here is heavy, broken only by the occasional creak of shutter or the whisper of wind through the ancient pines. Travelers who stumble upon Mistwood often speak of shadowy figures moving through the fog. They walk silently along cobblestone streets, their forms just barely visible, vanishing when approached. There is no sense of malice in these apparitions, only an unsettling awareness, as if the figures themselves are reminders that the village is alive with memory. Old lanterns hang outside abandoned homes, their faint glow flickering against the mist. These lanterns light themselves at night, casting pools of soft illumination on empty porches. No one has tended them for decades, yet their flames burn steadily, as if Summonia or some Thinga still calls the village home. Whispers echo from darkened doorways and narrow alleys. Names, fragmented conversations, or soft sighs drift through the air, indistinct yet unmistakable. The fog absorbs sound and stretches silence, making each whisper linger longer than it should. The buildings themselves tell. Windows are frosted with age. Roofs sag under the weight of moss and snow. And doors creak in rhythm with the wind. Some say that inside the homes, the furniture remains arranged as it was decades ago, untouched yet imbued with the lives that once moved through them. Each house is a vessel of memory, holding fragments of the past like echoes trapped in time. Footsteps follow those who wander the streets after dusk. Faint at first, almost imperceptible, then louder and more deliberate. It is never clear whether these sounds belong to the living or to the village itself, guiding and observing in equal measure. The fog transforms the landscape, blurring lines between road and river, forest and village. Shapes appear and dissolve, creating an uneasy sense of motion and stillness. Travelers report glimpses of children playing in the mist, only to realize that the laughter fades before the figures are fully seen. Other visitors feel the fleeting brush of a presence along their shoulders or arms, leaving a chill that settles deep within. At the center of Mistwood, the old town square holds a weathered fountain, dry yet elegant. The cobblestones surrounding it seem almost polished by invisible steps, patterns forming and fading as the fog moves. Lanterns suspended on wrought iron posts flicker unpredictably, as if acknowledging those who pass by, or perhaps testing the courage of the living who dare walk the deserted streets. The forest encroaches on the village from all sides. Ancient trees loom above, their branches heavy with moss. casting long shadows that merge with the fog. Wildlife is sparse, and yet sounds echo unnaturally. Branches snapping, leaves rustling without wind. Distant calls that cannot be identified. It is as if the forest itself is aware, watching the village and its visitors in quiet vigilance. Time behaves strangely in Mistwood. Daylight struggles to penetrate the dense mist, leaving a perpetual twilight even in midday. Shadows linger longer than they should, and the passage of hours feels suspended. Travelers often lose track of time, finding that a short walk through village can stretch into hours of wandering and observation. Some visitors have reported seeing the same figure more than once, appearing at the edge of the fog in one street, then reappearing in another moments later. Others have glimpsed groups of figures, moving through the village as though carrying on routines long abandoned by the living. There is a rhythm to these movements, a silent choreography that binds the village together across decades, or perhaps centuries. Doors that appear solid and locked sometimes swing open of their own accord. Windows creak on hinges without wind, and floorboards groan as though footsteps have passed where none are visible. These small disturbances are subtle, but they accumulate, leaving a lasting impression on anyone who spends even a single night within Mistwood. Despite the eerie activity, the village does not feel hostile. There's a quiet dignity here, a preservation of life that once thrived. The figures, the lanterns, the Whispersa, they are reminders of human presence and memory. The village invites observation, curiosity, and respect, rewarding those who move through it with a deep, lingering sense of connection to the past. Visitors leave Mistwood altered, carrying with them the weight of silence, an impression of lives long gone. The fog clings to their clothes, the whispers to their thoughts, and the faint light of lanterns to their memories. Visitors speak of a place that exists in both the real and the imagined, a village where history lingers as if unwilling to be forgotten. Mistwood Village endures, hidden among the Cascades, a place where fog and memory intertwine. A place where fog and memory intertwine. Of lanterns lighting themselves against the darkness, and of a presence that watches patiently. Of lanterns lighting themselves against the darkness, and of a presence that watches patiently. Those who enter may return to the world beyond the mountains, but they are never the same, touched forever by the quiet, haunting persistence of a village that refuses to fade. Those who enter may return to the world beyond the mountains, but they are never the same, touched forever by the quiet, haunting persistence of a village that refuses to fade. Hollow Pine sits quietly among towering pines, a village frozen in time. Its streets are cracked and overgrown, buildings standing with shattered windows and sagging roofs. As night falls, Hollow Pines takes on a different character. The silence deepens, pierced only by the rustling of branches and the occasional call of a night bird. Those who venture through the streets after dark speak of faint laughter echoing between the buildings, like children playing just out of reach. The sound is fleeting, never lingering, leaving an unsettling impression that something unseen is moving nearby. Figures are said to appear along the streets, small and fleeting, their shapes blurred by darkness. Ghostly children seem to play in the empty squares and alleys, their presence felt more than seen. They vanish when approached, leaving only the sense of movement and the faintest echo of footsteps behind. Travelers are described a chill in the air, a coldness that rises unexpectedly, brushing across the skin, as if the unseen are watching and waiting. Broken windows serve as portals to the past, revealing glimpses of shapes peeking out from the shadows. Eyes seem to follow passers-by, only to disappear when confronted. The interiors of these abandoned homes are dark and still, yet the feeling of presence is strong. Floorboards creak under invisible weight. Doors sometimes swing open or close without cause. The wind carries whispers that seem almost deliberate, circling around corners and through alleyways. The forest around Hollow Pines enhances the sense of isolation. The tall pines tower overhead, their branches intertwining to block moonlight, casting shifting shadows that move with the breeze. Every footstep echoes unnaturally, bouncing off the walls of abandoned buildings and through empty streets. Some travelers have reported the sensation of footsteps following them, soft but persistent, keeping pace even when they change direction, only to vanish when they look back. Hollow Pines is a town shaped by its absence. Empty storefronts and derelict homes tell stories without words, of lives that once filled the streets, of the lingering impressions left behind, where the boundaries between past and present feel thin, where the unseen are as present as the shadows, and where silence carries its own weight. Street lamps flicker intermittently, casting weak pools of light that barely touch the edges of the roads. Shadows gather in these dim corners, shifting with the breeze, sometimes taking shapes that resemble figures watching from a distance. The air carries an eerie stillness, punctuated by sudden, unexplained noises, a door slamming or the faint scuff of footsteps along the pavement. These sounds are subtle but persistent, as if the town itself is alive with memories that refuse to fade. Travelers who explore Hollow Pines describe a mixture of fascination and unease. The village is quiet during the day, yet at night it becomes a labyrinth of fleeting presences and subtle signs. The laughter of unseen children, the glimpses of figures at windows, and the sensation of being followed combine to create an atmosphere thick with mystery. Every corner, every alley, feels charged with the history of the town, whispering stories to those willing to listen. Even in moments of stillness, the presence of Hollow Pines is undeniable. Shadows shift, light flickers, and the air carries a weight that seems almost tangible. Visitors feel watched, as if the town itself remembers those who once lived there, and continues to replay fragments of their lives. The boundaries between what is real and what is unseen blur, leaving an impression that lingers long after leaving the streets behind. The forest and village merge seamlessly, a landscape of quiet isolation. The tall pines guard the town, their needles whispering in the wind. Broken structures cast long shadows that stretch across cracked sidewalks, hiding shapes that appear only when the eye is not fully focused. The faintest sounds of footsteps, laughter, whisper carry through the cool night air, leaving travelers uncertain if they are hearing echoes of the past or the restless present. Hollow Pines exists as a reminder of what remains when a town is abandoned but not forgotten. Its streets are filled with subtle movements, unseen figures, and the lingering energy of a place that refuses to be completely silent. Travelers walk carefully, eyes darting to broken windows and darkened doorways, aware that the village holds more than emptiness. Every step to the town is a journey through shadow and memory, a passage into the lingering presence that defines Hollow Pines. Night deepens, and the village rests under a canopy of stars and towering pines. Shadows move quietly along streets and sidewalks. Children play unseen, and figures peek from windows before disappearing into darkness. Children play unseen, and figures peek from windows before disappearing into darkness. Figures peek from windows before disappearing into darkness. A town suspended between past and present, where silence is filled with whispers, and every traveler carries with him the memory of its haunting, invisible inhabitants. Where silence is filled with whispers, and every traveler carries with him the memory of its haunting, invisible inhabitants. Every traveler carries with him the memory of its haunting, invisible inhabitants. Fogcrest is a village perpetually shrouded in a thick, low-hanging fog that settles over streets, buildings, and alleyways. The mist clings to every surface, blurring outlines and distorting familiar shapes, creating an atmosphere that feels both intimate and isolating. Visitors often speak an immediate sense of unease, a feeling that the fog conceals more than it reveals, hiding both the ordinary and the extraordinary. Walking through the narrow streets, the fog muffles sound and softens the edges of the village. Footsteps seem to vanish into the thick air, leaving travelers unsure if anyone else is near. Icy touches graze shoulders or arms in empty alleyways, leaving a chill and a heightened awareness of the environment. The air itself seems alive, moving in subtle, deliberate ways that hint at entities beyond comprehension. Doors creak and swing open without any visible cause. Some homes appear occupied, even when all lights are off. Visitors have described the sensation of being watched, as if unseen eyes follow each movement. Along the fog-drenched streets. The village seems to breathe in tandem with the fog, expanding and contracting with an energy that is both quiet and commanding. Faint voices drift through the mist, carrying names long forgotten. They come without pattern, sometimes whispering at a distance, sometimes close enough to suggest that someone stands beside the listener. The voices evoke memory and recognition that is not entirely real, a bridge between the present and the village's hidden history. It is a place where sound and shadow intertwine, creating moments of subtle terror that linger even after the fog has lifted. Buildings in Fogcrest are a mix of aged brick, timber, and stone, their surfaces slick with moisture from perpetual fog. Windows reflect distorted images, sometimes showing shapes that vanish when looked at directly. Hallways and alleyways stretch and twist, and even familiar paths can feel disorienting. Visitors often find themselves retracing steps, unsure if the fog has moved them or something unseen has guided their way. The village seems attuned to human presence. Furniture shifts subtly. Lights flicker. The faint echoes of movement are often heard where no one walks. These minor disturbances build a cumulative sense of unease, reinforcing the impression that Fogcrest is a place that observes and responds. Every creak, whisper, and sudden chill becomes part of a larger narrative written by the interaction of people and the unseen forces that inhabit the fog. As evening approaches, the fog thickens, swallowing the dim glow of street lamps and muting the sounds of the village. Shadows lengthen, stretching across cobblestone streets and mist-filled courtyards. Figures seem to appear at the periphery of vision, indistinct and fleeting, vanishing when confronted. Some visitors report glimpsing shapes that pause momentarily before retreating into fog, leaving only a lingering sense of presence. Fogcrest also holds its history in tangible ways. Abandoned buildings echo with past lives. An old signage and faded murals hint at a once vibrant village now caught between memory and the present. The fog carries fragments of this history, giving shape to whispers and movements that suggest lingering spirits, echoes of events long past, and a continuation of lives unseen. It is a place where the veil between the known and the unknown feels thin, and each moment of awareness is heightened by uncertainty. Even during the day, the fog blurs vision and distorts sound. Simple tasks like crossing a street or entering a building become exercises in perception, where every movement may carry significance. Doors that close by themselves, faint voices calling names, and shadows that linger at the edges of perception, all contribute to the sense that Fogcrest is alive with unseen energy. The village does not reveal itself easily, demanding patience, attention, and respect from those who enter. Visitors often speak of the emotional weight of the experience. The fog brings a sense of timelessness, a feeling that the village exists outside ordinary chronology. Every sound, touch, and movement feels amplified, and small anomalies take on monumental significance. It is in these moments that Fogcrest's quiet power is most apparent, shaping experiences and leaving lasting impressions long after departure. As night falls completely, the fog reaches its densest point. Shapes in the distance become nearly impossible to discern, and every alleyway and building seems imbued with latent activity. Figures appear briefly, lingering just long enough to be noticed before melting back into the mist. Whispers continue, now clearer, yet still impossible to locate, calling out names that resonate with the uncanny familiarity of memory and imagination intertwined. Fogcrest is a village of subtle hauntings, where the atmosphere itself is alive with presence. Icy touches, moving doors, whispering voices, and fleeting shadows combine to create a cinematic tension that engages the senses fully. It is a place where the ordinary is constantly challenged, and the unseen is ever present, shaping the perception and emotions of every visitor. Leaving Fogcrest, travelers carry with them a lingering awareness of the village's persistent energy. The fog, the whispers, the fleeting figures, and the sudden chills are all part of an immersive experience that transcends ordinary understanding. It is a place where the past and present intermingle, where memory and perception overlap, and where every visitor is subtly reminded that the village holds secrets waiting to be felt rather than fully explained. Each step through Fog Crest, whether in silent or accompanied by faint sounds, reinforces the idea that this village is a living presence. Shadows drift, voices echo, and doors move without cause. The fog becomes a conduit, linking all these phenomena into a cohesive, immersive experience. Visitors leave with the unmistakable sense that Fogcrest is more than Placia. It is a threshold, a liminal space where the ordinary brushes against the unseen, leaving memories that linger long after the fog is lifted. Whispering Oak sits shrouded in fog, a small village where the ordinary blends seamlessly with the extraordinary. By day, it appears quiet and unassuming, with narrow alleys lined by old oaks and a faint scent of damp earth lingering in the air. Travelers who arrive in the evening often notice lights flickering through the mist, suspended in the distance without any clear source. These lights dance across alleyways, shifting in brightness and color, disappearing when approached as if avoiding detection. The fog seems to carry them, curling around the ancient trees and creeping along the cobblestones, creating an atmosphere that is both captivating and unsettling. Figures appear silently along these alleys. Some witnesses describe fleeting glimpses of outlines in the fog, while others speak of shadows that linger momentarily before dissipating. The village seems to exist in a space where the line between the natural and the spectral is blurred, leaving visitors questioning what is real. The forest surrounding Whispering Oaks adds to its eerie charm. Soft laughter drifts from the woods at times, faint and melodic, as though carried on the wind. It is never loud or aggressive, but it is distinct enough to draw attention and curiosity. Some have followed the sounds, only to find empty clearings, the laughter vanishing as mysteriously as it began. The trees themselves seem to watch, their twisted branches creating shapes that appear almost human when glimpsed from a corner of the eye. Even the streets of the village hold subtle signs of life beyond the living. Doors that should be closed are found slightly ajar, and windows reflect movement that does not correspond to any passerby. The cobblestones seem to retain the weight of footsteps long after the traveler has moved on, and cold pockets of air appear without warning, brushing against the skin in the quietest moments. Some visitors describe an uncanny sensation of being watched. It is not threatening, but persistent, like the presence of unseen eyes observing every step. This awareness creates tension, sharpening every sound and shadow into something significant. Even ordinary objects seem to carry echoes of past activity, from chairs slightly shifted to leaves rustling with no discernible breeze. The village is alive in subtle, inexplicable ways. At night, the alleys of Whispering Oaks seem to stretch longer than they should, winding endlessly beneath the canopy of fog and oak branches. Figures can appear at the edges of vision, sometimes standing in the distance, watching silently before vanishing. The flickering lights add to this otherworldly quality, casting moving shadows that seem almost sentient, responding to the presence of the living in unpredictable ways. Travelers often recount feeling sudden chills, the air around them growing dense and cold without any apparent source. These moments are fleeting but sharp, leaving a lasting impression of the village as a place where the natural and the spectral coexist. Footsteps echo through empty streets, sometimes matching the pace of the visitor, yet never revealing the source. Whispers float on the wind, carrying phrases that cannot always be deciphered, yet their presence is unmistakable. The woods surrounding Whispering Oaks hold their own secrets. Branches twist into shapes that resemble figures when illuminated by the flickering lights of the village. Soft laughter continues to echo, often seeming to come from multiple directions at once. The fog acts as a veil, hiding much while hinting at more, creating an atmosphere of suspense that is difficult to shake. Each journey into the woods feels like stepping into a living story, where reality is just one layer among many. Even in the quietest hours, the village does not sleep. Lights flicker through windows, shadows move in empty alleys, and the soft sound of laughter drifts across the fog. The sense of presence is constant, a subtle reminder that Whispering Oaks is not merely a place, but a space where unseen forces interact with the living. Each visitor leaves with stories that are part observation, part impression, and wholly memorable. The village seems to remember every arrival and departure. The flickering lights, the vanishing figures, the whispers, and the cold touches all form a tapestry of experiences that visitors carry with them. The fog, dense and enveloping, serves as both barrier and reveal, hiding details while highlighting others, shaping each encounter into a unique, immersive moment. Whispering Oaks is a place of quiet mystery, a village that rewards curiosity while maintaining a sense of distance. The interplay of light, shadow, sound, and fog creates an atmosphere that is alive and unpredictable. It is not a place of overt terror, but of subtle unease, a location where the senses are heightened and the boundaries between what is seen and what is sensed blur. Visitors leave Whispering Oaks changed. The figures that move silently, and the laughter from the woods. The village exists as a living reminder that some places are more than they appear, preserving layers of experience that reach beyond the ordinary. Invite those willing to see, hear, and feel the unseen. The village exists as a living reminder that some places are more than they appear. In every corner of Whispering Oaks, the ordinary and extraordinary meet. The streets echo with unseen footsteps, and the alleys conceal figures that vanish at the edge of sight. It is a place that challenges perception, invites exploration, and leaves an indelible impression on all who pass through. A village where the mysteries of the night are alive and waiting. Shadow Glen lies tucked along narrow, winding roads, shrouded in dense forests that press close on every side. The village is isolated, removed from the rush of the outside world, where fog settles like a thick blanket and carries with it a strange, lingering stillness. Travelers who approach often find the road disappearing into gray mist, the edges of the forest blending seamlessly with the clouds above. The streets of Shadow Glen are quiet, yet alive with unseen presence. Guests report glimpses of shadowy figures standing in corners. These forms do not move when observed directly, but appear when only as attention drifts, vanishing when approached. The feeling of being watched is constant, subtle, yet impossible to ignore. Whispers drift across the streets, carried by the fog. They are soft at first, just fragments of sound, indistinct words that seem to form sentences only when the mind strains to listen. Names, conversations, sighs, and half-uttered thoughts echo from empty buildings, returning again and again to those who linger too long. The air is thick with anticipation, as if the village itself is breathing and speaking through shadows and sound. The air is thick with anticipation, as if the village itself is breathing and speaking through shadows and sound. Buildings in Shadow Glen are old and weathered, their timbers warped by years of neglect. Windows are clouded with age, shutters hang unevenly, and roofs sag under the weight of moss and rain. Some visitors have found doors opening on their own, floorboards creaking as if underfoot, though no one can be seen. Every structure carries its own sense of history, each corner and hallway a silent witness to lives that have long passed. The fog weaves through the village with a life of its own, moving between homes, twisting along narrow alleys, and curling around lamp posts. Lights from distant windows appear briefly, flickering as if struggling against the gray, and vanish just as quickly, leaving only a memory of illumination. Travelers often feel the weight of unseen eyes in these moments, the sensation of presence pressing just beyond the edge of vision. Footsteps pace outside windows at night, slow and deliberate. Sometimes they stop, leaving only silence, then resume, following the rhythm of unseen inhabitants. Those who listen closely swear they can sense patterns, a silent choreography of movement that feels almost purposeful, almost familiar. The sounds are close enough to startle, yet distant enough to remain untraceable, leaving the imagination to fill the void. The village is surrounded by thick woods, ancient trees reaching toward the sky with skeletal branches. The forest seems to guard the town, holding back the wider world and keeping the mist contained. Occasionally, travelers glimpse shapes among the trees, silhouettes that move without sound, vanishing when attention turns. Even in daylight, the shadows seem alive, hinting at a presence that never rests. Time in Shadow Glen feels suspended. Moments stretch longer than they should, and the light bends through fog in strange ways. A walk from one end of the village to the other can feel endless, as though the streets themselves have shifted while no one was looking. The experience leaves visitors disoriented, unsure where the village ends and the mist begins. Some who spend the night report changes in perception. Shadows in corners appear closer, whispers seem clearer, and the feeling of being observed intensifies. Objects shift slightly between visits. Doors are ajar when they should be closed, and faint impressions in the dust suggest movement where none is possible. These subtle disturbances compound, creating a sense of unease that lingers long after leaving the village. The village square holds a weathered fountain, dry and cracked, its edges softened by years of neglect. Around it, the fog thickens, shadows pooling in its cracks. Lanterns hung on posts flicker faintly as if aware of observers, casting moving light over cobblestones worn smooth by generations. The square is silent during the day, yet hums with hidden activity, a heartbeat felt rather than seen. Visitors describe an eerie duality in Shadow Glen. The village is at once welcoming and hostile, familiar and alien. Its shadows and whispers are not overtly threatening, but they create a tension that settles deep in the chest. The sense of being watched is constant, a subtle reminder that the past and present coexist here, entwined in ways that defy explanation. As night falls, the fog thickens further, swallowing streetlights and dimming windows. Figures appear briefly at alleyways, moving along streets in the dim glow, only to dissolve into the mist. The whispers grow louder, calling out names or half-formed sentences, drifting across rooftops and along the edges of the forest. The village itself seems to be awake, moving in a rhythm all its own, guided by memories of lives long gone. Those who leave Shadow Glen carry the memory of its shadows and whispers with them. The fog, the figures, the subtle sounds of pacing footsteps. They linger in thought and in dream. The village leaves an imprint, a sense of having touched a place where the boundaries between the living and unseen are blurred, where every corner may hold a secret, and every whisper may carry a story waiting to be heard. Shadow Glen remains, hidden along its winding roads, ever watchful, cloaked in mist and shadow. It is a village that endures quietly, preserving memory, presence, and the strange, subtle mysteries of time. Travelers who enter may depart, but they are never the same, marked forever by the soft echoes, shifting shadows, and haunting rhythm of a village that moves quietly alongside the living and the unseen. Raven Hollow lies tucked among dense trees, its streets winding like veins through a village that feels both forgotten and alive. The air carries a chill, and the distant sound of crows can be heard before the town itself comes into view. Their calls echo from rooftops, perching silently on gabled edges, filling the sky with a sense of foreboding that settles over visitors before they even step into the streets. During the day, Raven Hollow seems almost ordinary, though there's a weight to the silence that is hard to ignore. The buildings stand in varying states of repair, some with peeling paint and boarded windows, others with doors that swing gently on rusted hinges. Shadows gather in narrow alleys, moving subtly with the sunlight, as if the town itself is shifting beneath the eyes of those who wander its streets. As night falls, the village transforms. Figures appear in doorways, their shapes fleeting and indistinct. They linger for only moments, often disappearing when approached, leaving behind only the sense of being watched. The streets themselves seem to stretch and contract in the dim light, and travelers report feeling an icy draft that moves along walls and through empty rooms, as if the town breathes on its own. Fog is a frequent visitor to Raven Hollow. The mist seems deliberate, curling along floors and around corners, obscuring familiar objects and reshaping them in the dim light. Some have described it as cold to the touch, carrying with it the faint scent of earth and decay, a reminder that the town is older and stranger than it appears at first glance. The crows, ever present, seem to guide the mood of the village. Travelers awake to the sound of wings flapping overhead or the repetitive call of a single bird, and often find themselves standing alone in the darkness, unsure if they have truly heard the sound or imagined it in the weight of the night. Buildings in Raven Hollow hold a peculiar energy. Windows offer fleeting glimpses of movement inside, yet when observed directly, the interiors remain empty. Doors open slowly, sometimes closing behind unseen presences. Footsteps are heard along hallways and streets, echoing unnaturally, following travelers as they walk, vanishing when they turn to confront them. The town seems to respond to the presence of visitors, moving subtly around them, as if aware of their attention. Even the natural elements contribute to its strange atmosphere. Trees sway in windless nights, and shadows dance across walls without a source of light. The occasional flicker of an old lantern or reflection from broken glass can appear and vanish in seconds, hinting at figures moving just beyond perception. Travelers describe a sensation of being watched, of something unseen tracking their every step through the village. Fog and darkness intermingle to create hallways and streets that seem endless. Alleyways stretch deeper than expected, and familiar paths twist unpredictably, making it difficult to gauge distance or direction. The town blurs the line between the tangible and the imagined, inviting visitors to question what they see and what they sense. Shapes seem to take form in the corners of vision, only to dissolve when directly looked at, leaving the observer with lingering unease. Those who spend hours in Raven Hollow often report encounters that defy explanation. Shadows linger at doorways, figures appear on rooftops, and the ever-present crows seem to mark the passage of time differently than the outside world. Sounds carry strangely, and whispers can be heard in the wind, sometimes repeating names familiar to visitors in ways that feel impossible. The village itself feels like a living memory. Every street, building, and empty room carries fragments of the past, echoed in subtle movements and fleeting figures. There's a weight to the silence, a presence that fills the spaces between footsteps and breath. Visitors leave Raven Hollow with stories of sights and sounds that cannot be fully explained, impressions that linger long after they have departed, and a sense that the village remains watching, waiting for the next traveler to wander its streets. Raven Hollow, with its fog, crows, and shifting shadows, remains suspended in time, a place where boundary between the living and the unseen is fragile. Every movement, every whispered sound, every fleeting figure reinforces the mystery that surrounds a village. Those who venture there carry with them the memory of its atmosphere, the sense of eyes in darkness, and the feeling that the town itself is alive, quietly observing all who enter. Pinevale is a village that seems to exist in the space between reality and memory. As night falls, an unnatural chill settles over the streets, seeping into every corner and alleyway. The fog rolls with deliberate slowness, thick and heavy, wrapping the village in an opaque veil. The cold is more than physical. It carries an atmosphere of anticipation, as though the town itself waits for something unseen to reveal itself. Street lamps flicker with irregular light, casting long shadows that stretch across cobblestones and sidewalks. Figures appear at the edge of perception, moving silently through the mist. They drift across open spaces, vanishing when approached, leaving behind only the faintest impressions of movement. And an unsettling sense of being watched. Every step through Pinevale at night feels measured, cautious, as if the village is aware of the visitor and responds subtly to their presence. The buildings are aged and weathered, their facades marked by decades of exposure to the elements. Windows reflect distorted images, shadows that do not belong, and glimpses of movement that vanish the moment the eyes focus on them. The alleys between houses twist and curve unexpectedly, and even familiar paths seem altered under the cover of fog and darkness. It is in this shifting environment that the village's atmosphere becomes most palpable, where perception and reality feel tenuously linked. Whispers emanate from the trees surrounding Pinevale, voices that carry across empty streets and echo through the alleys. They call out names softly but insistently, sometimes clear, sometimes indistinct. It is impossible to locate the source, and the effect is disorienting, as if the forest itself is alive with memory and consciousness. Even ordinary details are imbued with strangeness. Doors move slightly, as if breathing, and a faint creak of hinges accompanies the wind in subtle, almost imperceptible ways. Shadows appear where no source of light exists, lingering just long enough to be noticed before dissolving into the fog. The village seems to observe and react, creating moments of tension that are both thrilling and unnerving. Paths leading out of Pinevale are obscured by mist, making the simple act of leaving a journey through uncertainty. The fog thickens in low areas, swallowing the dim glow of street lamps and muting sound. Figures are glimpsed standing silently in corners behind fences or along narrow walkways. They remain just beyond clear sight, vanishing when approached, leaving only a lingering feeling of presence. The sense of being observed heightens with every step, reinforcing the village's enigmatic nature. Pinevale's history is present in subtle ways. Faded signs, worn gravestones, and abandoned structures hint at stories left behind, lives once lived, and secrets that remain unresolved. The environment seems to carry fragments of memory, giving shape to the whispers, movements, and shadows that visitors encounter. Even the natural surroundings of the gnarled trees, the mist-laden fields, and the silent river that winds along the village edges seem to hold stories, shaping perception and experience. Even the natural surroundings of the gnarled trees, the mist-laden fields, and the silent river that winds along the village edges seem to hold stories, shaping perception and experience. The environment seems to carry fragments of memory, giving shape to the whispers, movements, and shadows that visitors encounter. Even the natural surroundings of the gnarled trees, the mist-laden fields, and the silent river that winds along the village edges seem to hold stories, shaping perception and experience. Even the natural surroundings of the gnarled trees, the mist-laden fields, and the silent river that winds along the village edges seem to hold stories, shaping perception and experience. Even the natural surroundings of the gnarled trees, the mist-laden fields, and the silent river that winds along the village edges seem to hold stories, shaping perception and experience. The environment seems to carry fragments of memory, giving shape to the whispers, movements, and shadows that visitors encounter. Pinevale's history is present in subtle ways. Faded signs, worn gravestones, and abandoned structures hint at stories left behind, lives once lived, and secrets that remain unresolved. Even the natural surroundings of the gnarled trees, the mist-laden fields, and the silent river that winds along the village edges seem to hold stories, shaping perception and experience. The environment seems to carry fragments of memory, giving shape to the whispers, movements, and shadows that visitors encounter. Pinevale's history is present in subtle ways. Faded signs, worn gravestones, and abandoned structures hint at stories left behind, lives once lived, and secrets that remain unresolved. The environment seems to carry fragments of memory, giving shape to the whispers, movements, and shadows that visitors encounter. Even the natural surroundings of the gnarled trees, the mist-laden fields, and the silent river that winds along the village edges seem to hold stories, shaping perception and experience. The environment seems to carry fragments of memory, giving shape to the whispers, movements, and shadows that visitors encounter. Even the natural surroundings of the gnarled trees, the mist-laden fields, and the silent river that winds along the village edges seem to hold stories, shaping perception and experience. Even the natural surroundings of the gnarled trees, the mist-laden fields, and the silent river that winds along the village edges seem to hold stories, shaping perception and experience. The environment seems to carry fragments of memory, giving shape to the whispers, movements, and shadows that visitors encounter. Pinevale's history is present in subtle ways. Faded signs, worn gravestones, and abandoned structures hint at stories left behind, lives once lived, and secrets that remain unresolved. Even the natural surroundings of the gnarled trees, the mist-laden fields, and the silent river that winds along the village edges seem to hold stories, shaping perception and experience. The environment seems to carry fragments of memory, giving shape to the whispers, movements, and shadows that visitors encounter. Pinevale's history is present in subtle ways. Faded signs, worn gravestones, and abandoned structures hint at stories left behind, lives once lived, and secrets that remain unresolved. Even the natural surroundings of the gnarled trees, the mist-laden fields, and the silent river that winds along the village edges seem to hold stories, shaping perception and experience. The environment seems to carry fragments of memory, giving shape to the whispers, movements, and shadows that visitors encounter. Pinevale's history is present in subtle ways. Faded signs, worn gravestones, and abandoned structures hint at stories left behind, lives once lived, and secrets that remain unresolved. Even the natural surroundings of the gnarled trees, the mist-laden fields, and the silent river that winds along the village edges seem to hold stories, shaping perception and experience. The environment seems to carry fragments of memory, giving shape to the whispers, movements, and shadows that visitors encounter. Even the natural surroundings of the gnarled trees, the mist-laden fields, and the silent river that winds along the village edges seem to hold stories, shaping perception and experience. Pinevale's history is present in subtle ways. Faded signs, worn gravestones, and abandoned structures hint at stories left behind, lives once lived, and secrets that remain unresolved. Even the natural surroundings of the gnarled trees, the mist-laden fields, and the silent river that winds along the village edges seem to hold stories, shaping perception and experience. The environment seems to carry fragments of memory, giving shape to the whispers, movements, and shadows that visitors encounter. Even the natural surroundings of the gnarled trees, the mist-laden fields, and the silent river that winds along the village edges seem to hold stories, shaping perception and experience. Pinevale's history is present in subtle ways. Faded signs, worn gravestones, and abandoned structures hint at stories left behind, lives once lived, and secrets that remain unresolved. Even the natural surroundings of the gnarled trees, the mist-laden fields, and the silent river that winds along the village edges seem to hold stories, shaping perception and experience. The environment seems to carry fragments of memory, giving shape to the whispers, movements, and shadows that visitors encounter. Even the natural surroundings of the gnarled trees, the mist-laden fields, and the silent river that winds along the village edges seem to hold stories, shaping perception and experience. Pinevale's history is present in subtle ways. Faded signs, worn gravestones, and abandoned structures hint at stories left behind, lives once lived, and secrets that remain unresolved. Even the natural surroundings of the gnarled trees, the mist-laden fields, and the silent river that winds along the village edges seem to hold stories, shaping perception and experience. The environment seems to carry fragments of memory, giving shape to the whispers, movements, and shadows that visitors encounter. Even the natural surroundings of the gnarled trees, the mist-laden fields, and the silent river that winds along the village edges seem to hold stories, shaping perception and experience. Pinevale's history is present in subtle ways. Faded signs, worn gravestones, and abandoned structures hint at stories left behind, lives once lived, and secrets that remain unresolved. Night in Pinevale is a sensory experience. The air feels dense and alive, carrying sounds that are not immediately explainable. Footsteps echo where no one walks. The mist thickens around corners and between buildings, creating pockets of obscurity where shapes and forms appear and disappear. Visitors describe the sensation of being touched by a cold, intangible presence, brief and fleeting, yet unmistakably real. The village's energy is subtle but persistent. Shadows linger in hallways and under arches. Figures appear at the edges of vision, and the occasional flicker of light suggests movement where none should be. It is not a violent or aggressive presence, but one that is deeply aware and deliberately elusive. Every sound, movement, and flicker of light becomes part of the unfolding narrative that Pinevale presents to its visitors. As night deepens, the fog settles into every nook and cranny, heightening the sense of isolation. Figures move silently through streets and alleys, appearing briefly before disappearing into the veil. Whispers rise from the trees, carrying across the empty village with clarity and precision that is impossible to trace. The natural and supernatural blend seamlessly, creating an atmosphere where every detail is magnified and every shadow holds potential significance. Even when the village is quiet, Pinevale is never still. The fog carries subtle motion, sound of life that cannot be accounted for, and the presence of the unseen. Every experience feels charged with awareness, as though the village itself is alive, observing and shaping perceptions of those who enter. Visitors leave carrying the weight of this atmosphere. The memory of whispers, shadowy forms, and fleeting touches lingering long after they have departed. Pine Vale exists in a liminal space where reality and the unseen overlap. The village transforms with each visitor, responding in subtle ways, and leaving behind impressions that endure. In Pine Vale, night is not simply darkness, but a living entity, a canvas upon which the mysterious, the unexplainable, and the spectral play out with deliberate and haunting grace. Walking through Pine Vale at night, every step, every sound, and every shadow reinforces a sense that the village is more than a location. It is an active participant. The mist guides, the shadows observe, and the whispers communicate in a language that is half memory, half mystery. Visitors leave with the undeniable impression that Pine Vale holds its secrets closely, revealing them only in fleeting moments, and always maintaining an air of haunting, enigmatic presence. Blackwood Village sits in silence, a place abandoned for decades, yet somehow alive with whispers of the past. The roads that once bustled with life now lie cracked and overgrown, leading to buildings whose windows are darkened by years of neglect. At first glance, the village appears still, almost frozen in time, but for those who venture within, it is anything but empty. For those who venture within, it is anything but empty. Doors open on their own, swinging slowly as if guided by invisible hands. The sound echoes through the hollow halls, startling those who expect nothing more than stillness. Rooms that should be empty feel thick with presence. Visitors report a sudden brush against their arms, the faint touch of hands that leave no mark. It is a sensation that both intrigues and unsettles, hinting at a world beyond the ordinary. Shadows move in the fog that rolls across the village from the surrounding woods. Shadows shift along the edges of windows and walls, sometimes indistinct shapes, other times appearing almost human. The fog acts as a veil, distorting reality and turning ordinary glimpses into fleeting visions that vanish when closely observed. There is a rhythm to the movement, a silent choreography that seems aware of every observer. Walking through the streets, one notices how sound behaves strangely in Blackwood. Footsteps echo in empty lanes, not always matching the movement of the traveler. The crunch of leaves or the creak of old boards often comes from directions where no one stands. These auditory illusions blend seamlessly with the physical sensations, creating a layered experience that engages both body and mind. Inside the buildings, the atmosphere grows heavier. Dust hangs in shafts of fading light, and the faint smell of wood and decay lingers in the air. Some visitors have felt a cold breeze brush past them in hallways with no windows open, or doors that suddenly close behind them with no visible cause. Each room holds a history, a memory embedded in the very walls, waiting to be felt by those who enter. The village's fog-laden exterior adds to the sense of mystery. Shadows linger just beyond vision, sometimes darting behind corners or disappearing into the mist. There's a stillness between moments of activity that heightens awareness, making every sound sharper, every movement more pronounced. The forest surrounding Blackwood seems to press in, its trees tall and silent, yet their presence felt in the subtle rustle of leaves or the occasional snap of a branch. Visitors often speak of a sensation of being watched. It is not threatening but persistent, a quiet awareness that something or something follows. This presence can make simple actions feel charged with significance, from stepping over a threshold to passing a cracked window. The village maintains its secrets through subtle interactions, revealing its mysteries in fragments rather than all at once. Even during the day, Blackwood does not feel entirely deserted. The light filtering through the fog catches on objects in strange ways. Broken chairs cast long shadows, and the remnants of old signs sway slightly as if touched by unseen hands. The village exists in a state of quiet tension, a liminal space where past and present intersect, and the ordinary blends with the spectral. Some visitors explore the village at night, drawn by curiosity or a sense of adventure. The darkness magnifies every sound and movement. The fog becomes a living entity, curling around corners, slipping through doors, and shaping the perception of what is real. Figures sometimes appear in peripheral vision, lingering in doorways or just beyond windows, then dissolve as soon as attention is directed at them. The interplay of light, shadow, and fog creates an environment where the imagination and reality merge seamlessly. Blackwood Village seems to preserve the traces of those who once lived there. Chairs slightly shifted, doors left ajar, objects moved from where they were expected to be. Each anomaly adds to the impression that the village is not entirely empty. It is as if the spirits of the past continue to interact with the present, guiding, observing, and occasionally startling those who wander through. Blackwood Village seems to preserve the traces of those who once lived there. The fog, shadows, and sounds all combine to make each visit unique. No two journeys through Blackwood feel the same. Visitors leave with stories of brushes with the unseen, of fleeting figures, whispers that linger in memory, and the persistent sensation of being observed. The village holds onto its history in an almost tangible way, creating an atmosphere of both fascination and unease. Blackwood Village is not a place of overt terror, but of quiet suspense. The presence felt in its streets and buildings, the subtle movements in the fog, the cold touches in empty rooms, all contribute to a sense of life beyond what is visible. It is a village where the ordinary and extraordinary coexist, where time seems to bend, and where those who enter are invited to experience its mysteries firsthand. Every corner of Blackwood offers a story. Each shadow, each creaking door, each echoing step forms part of a narrative that is not entirely ours to tell. Visitors come and go, but the village remains, preserving its atmosphere, its unseen residents, and the lingering traces of a past that refuses to be forgotten. The ordinary is transformed, and the invisible is made almost tangible, leaving a lasting impression that resonates long after one has departed. The village holds its secrets patiently, revealing them only to those willing to look and feel closely. Blackwood is a place of subtle hauntings, of quiet movements and lingering presences, where the echoes of the past are alive, and where the boundary between the seen and unseen is never entirely clear. It is a space of mystery, memory, and an enduring sense of life that persists even in abandonment. Fog Haven lies hidden in a low valley, where the air is thick and the fog descends without warning. Travelers often speak of approaching the town along winding roads, only to find visibility reduced to a few feet. Shapes appear and vanish in the mist, and even familiar landmarks seem altered, distorted by layers of gray that cling to every surface. The streets of Fog Haven are empty, yet they are never truly silent. Footsteps echo faintly along cobblestones, though no one is seen. Figures sometimes appear in doorways, standing motionless, watching as if waiting. Their presence is brief and fleeting, dissolving into the fog when approached. The town seems alive, but not in any way that the eye can fully comprehend. Whispers thread through the mist, soft and indistinct at first, then forming words that sound like names. Travelers report feeling the fog carry voices, calling from behind shutters, from alleyways and across empty squares. The sound is subtle, almost dreamlike, yet it leaves an impression, a sense that someone or something is aware of every movement. Buildings in Fog Haven are weathered and old, their wooden facades worn by wind and rain. Shutters hang loosely on hinges, doors creak on their own, and the streets are lined with cracked lanterns that flicker despite the absence of electricity. The town appears abandoned, yet it hums with subtle activity. Each corner, each shadowed doorway, hints at unseen lives lingering just beyond perception. The fog is more than a simple weather phenomenon. It twists and coils around the buildings, drifting into open windows and curling along the eaves. It blurs boundaries, hiding details and creating illusions. Shapes seem to move within it, figures gliding past lamplight, disappearing before they can be fully recognized. It gives the town a presence that feels both timeless and immediate. Footsteps follow travelers along narrow alleys, light at first and then heavier, pacing in a rhythm that feels deliberate. Some report doors opening as they approach, only to reveal empty hallways. Shadows shift across walls when no one stands, and faint figures appear on rooftops, motionless against the gray sky. These moments are fleeting but leave a deep impression, a sense of being observed by forces unseen. The town square is centered around an old fountain, dry and cracked. Fog gathers thickest here, swirling and rising as though the town itself breathes. Lanterns hang on posts, glowing softly, casting long, uncertain shadows. Shapes appear and disappear at the edges of perception, sometimes glimpsed from a distance, sometimes felt more than seen. Visitors feel the weight of history in every detail, as though Foghaven remembers everyone who has passed through. Time behaves strangely within the fog. The day can feel as long as a week, and the night stretches endlessly. Light bends in unusual ways. Shadows move contrary to expectation, and the silence is punctuated by whispers and footsteps that never seem to originate from anywhere tangible. Travelers often leave with a sense that the town exists slightly out of phase with the world outside, a place where reality is fluid and memories linger. The fog carries more than sound, it carries sensation. Cold brushes against the skin without wind, the mist clings to clothing, and the subtle impression of eyes watching never fades. Some visitors describe the sensation of being touched by unseen hands, a gentle but undeniable presence that follows along the streets. The fog and the town are intertwined, a living entity that stretches across alleys, courtyards, and doorways. Foghaven is not hostile in an overt sense. There is no threat in the usual understanding, yet there is tension, an unrelenting awareness. The town responds to attention, shifting slightly as eyes turn, revealing corners and paths that were not there moments before. Whispers seem to guide, warn, or remind, carrying fragments of stories, names, and half-formed sentences. It is a town alive in the subtle, quiet ways that cannot be ignored. As night falls, the fog thickens further, swallowing lamplight and dimming windows. Figures glide through the streets, their outlines momentary, fading into gray. Voices grow sharper in the distance, yet remain just out of reach, calling names that may or may not belong to the living. Travelers feel the weight of the unseen, a presence that watches and remembers. Those who leave Foghaven carry its memory with them. The fog, the whispers, the shifting shadowsa. They linger long after the town disappears from sight. Even miles away, the sensation of being observed, the echo of names in the wind, and the subtle movement in the corner of vision remain. Foghaven leaves an imprint, an awareness of a place where the boundaries between the tangible and the unseen blur. A town that is as much a feeling as it is a location. Foghaven endures, a village hidden in mist, alive with memory and presence. It exists for those who enter and notice, shaping perception, bending reality, and reminding travelers that some places are never truly empty. The fog conceals and reveals, whispers and watches, leaving every visitor with a sense of quiet unease and lingering curiosity, a connection to a town that lives between the world of the seen and the unseen. A connection to a town that lives between the world of the seen and the unseen. Misty Hollow sits nestled among rolling hills, its streets lined with quaint houses and aged stone walls. By day, the village seems serene, bathed in sunlight, with smoke curling from chimneys and the soft hum of daily life drifting across the streets. Birds sing in the trees, and the wind carries the faint scent of damp earth and wildflowers. Everything appears calm, almost picturesque, as if untouched by time. Yet as dusk falls, a transformation begins. A thick fog rolls down from the surrounding hills, settling over the village like a heavy curtain. Street lamps flicker through the mist, casting pools of dim light that barely reach the edges of the fog. The quiet that accompanies night feels unnatural, dense, and oppressive. It is a kind of silence that seems aware, as if the village itself is holding its breath, watching for those who dare to wander after dark. Shadows begin to stretch and shift along the streets. They appear at the corners of vision, slipping between buildings and along rooftops, moving in ways that do not align with the wind or the natural sway of branches. Some vanish when approached, leaving only the lingering feeling of being observed. The fog enhances these illusions, making it difficult to distinguish solid form from mist. Visitors often hesitate to take a step forward, uncertain of what may emerge from the haze. Abandoned homes line certain streets, their windows dark and unwelcoming. Faint cries echo from within, carried softly by the fog. Sometimes they sound like children, other times like adults calling out in distress. The voices seem to drift just beyond reach, impossible to pinpoint or answer. Travelers speak of the sensation of standing outside a window, hearing a soft sob or whispered plea, only to find nothing inside when they muster the courage to enter. Footsteps are another common occurrence in Misty Hollow. They follow the living through narrow streets and along deserted alleys, echoing oddly in the thick mist. At times, footsteps approach from behind, pause for a moment, then retreat silently into the fog. Visitors report sudden chills, the feeling of a presence passing close by, yet no one is there. It is as if the village is alive, moving unseen around those who traverse it, responding to their presence with subtle but unsettling gestures. The architecture itself contributes to the village's eerie atmosphere. Stone walls glisten with dampness in the fog, and timber-framed houses lean slightly, casting long, dark shadows. Lanterns sway gently in the mist, their glow refracted by the moisture in the air, creating illusions of figures that appear to glide across streets or peer from windows. Even familiar paths seem unfamiliar at night, twisting slightly as the fog thickens, leading visitors in circles or down streets they did not intend to follow. Misty Hollow's trees play a part in the unsettling ambience. Their bare branches claw at the fog, forming shapes that appear almost human, and the wind moves through them with a low, whispering hum. Shadows among the trees seem to shift independently, and at times, visitors swear they see something stepping lightly across the branches, too agile to be any animal they know. The combination of fog, silence, and dark forms create a landscape that is simultaneously beautiful and haunting. Even the natural sounds of the village take on a strange quality. The distant river becomes a low, mournful groan as the fog thickens, and the occasional hoot of an owl echoes through empty streets with a resonance that makes it sound closer than it should. The faint scraping of branches against walls can be mistaken for steps, and doors that were closed moments ago sometimes swing open with the slightest breeze, though no one is near. The village seems to amplify ordinary sounds into something uncanny, keeping visitors on edge as they move through it. Encounters with figures are fleeting but unforgettable. Shadowy forms appear at the edge of vision, sometimes lingering in doorways or at the tops of stairs, watching silently before disappearing. Guests report the sensation of eyes upon them, cold and unyielding, even when no one is visible. Some see glimpses of movement in upper windows, as if someone is pacing, though the houses have been empty for years. Each experience leaves an impression that feels alive, etched into the mind long after leaving the village. Misty Hollow is a place where the boundary between reality and the unseen feels fragile. Every street, alley, and abandoned home holds the potential for a new encounter. Visitors leave carrying memories of fog-filled streets, distant cries, and shadows that seem to watch and follow. The village retains its secrets well, cloaked in mist and silence, preserving the feeling that it exists partly in another world, a space where the living and the unseen brush against one another in fleeting, unforgettable moments. Those who step into Misty Hollow at night quickly realize that it is a village that never truly sleeps. Its streets, houses, and fog-laden corners are alive with presence, echoing faintly in every footstep and whisper of wind. Even after departing, travelers cannot shake the sensation of being watched, of echoes lingering in their minds, and the haunting beauty of a village that seems to exist in a state between reality and dream, forever shrouded in mist. Thorn Ridge lies hidden among twisted trees whose branches intertwine like darkened fingers, creating a canopy that blocks much of the sky. The village seems frozen in time, quiet except for the occasional creak of wood or the rustle of leaves. Shadows stretch across narrow streets, giving the sense that movement is never far away. Even in the light of day, the place feels suspended, a boundary between the ordinary and the unseen. Travelers passing through Thornridge often glimpse figures slipping behind buildings or vanishing in alleyways. At first, the movements are subtle, a flicker at the corner of the eye, but repeated experiences leave a lingering impression. It is as if the village itself holds secrets, encouraging a sense of anticipation with every step. The air carries a weight that is almost tangible, pressing against visitors in quiet, deliberate ways. Windows occasionally glow from within, illuminating rooms where no electricity flows. The light pulses faintly, appearing for a moment and then fading, leaving a dark void behind. Observers report feelings of unease, a subtle insistence that someone or something watches, aware of every movement. Even doors left closed may shift slightly as though breathing, their hinges responding to forces invisible yet undeniably present. Alleyways in Thornridge seem to twist unexpectedly, bending perception and obscuring distance. Footsteps echo in the deserted lanes, though no one is visible. Whispers follow travelers, soft but insistent, murmuring words that cannot be traced. They seem to drift from corners, doorways, and the tangled trees surrounding the village. The sound is intimate, personal, and impossible to ignore. The buildings themselves tell stories without words. Weathered facades and aged timbers bear the imprint of decades. Yet there is something more within their walls. Faded paint and cracked glass seem to move with a life of their own, reflecting shapes that do not belong in shadows that stretch unnaturally. Thornridge feels alive in a way that is both subtle and profound, as though memory and presence are interwoven into its very structure. The forest surrounding the village adds to the sense of isolation. Twisted trees line narrow paths, their roots breaking through stone and earth, creating shadows that blend seamlessly with the dimly lit streets. Fog drifts along the edges of the village, thickening in low areas and muting sound. Figures emerge and vanish within the mist, sometimes standing silently in open spaces, sometimes dissolving when approached. At night, Thornridge transforms completely. Darkness drapes over every building and alley, and the village becomes a labyrinth of shadows. Figures drift quietly between homes and down streets, leaving behind impressions rather than concrete forms. Even familiar landmarks feel altered, and the fog enhances a sense that every corner may conceal an unseen presence. The experience is both unnerving and compelling, drawing observers further into the village's mysterious embrace. Visitors often describe the sensation of being followed without seeing a source. Cold spots appear suddenly, brushing along shoulders and backs, fleeting yet undeniable. The whispers persist, at times speaking in familiar tones, as if the past itself is reaching across time to communicate. Every step feels measured, deliberate, the air thick with anticipation, suggesting that the village is a rhythm known only to those who have lived within its boundaries for generations. Doors and windows seem to respond to unseen forces. Some open without warning, others close with an abruptness that startles even the most composed. Shadows shift across walls and floors, and reflections in glass often reveal movement that is impossible to locate. Thornridge is a place of subtle disturbances, where the environment itself participates in the experience, shaping perception and heightening awareness of the unseen. Even during the day, the village retains an air of suspense. Sunlight filtering through the twisted branches casts long, moving shadows, and the wind carries faint sounds that resemble voices. Small details, a tilted sign, a swinging lantern, a flickering shadow, create the impression that Thornridge is attentive, observing the movements of those who enter. Each moment becomes layered with tension, curiosity, and awareness that the ordinary world does not fully apply here. Paths leading away from Thornridge are obscured by fog and twisted undergrowth. Travelers attempting to leave sometimes report disorientation, as streets and alleys appear altered, converging or diverging in ways that defy expectation. The Village's design itself seems to preserve secrecy, guiding movement while revealing just enough to maintain fascination. Every glance over the shoulder reinforces a sense that the village watches, reacts, and remembers. The lead investigator peers into the fog, a look of growing unease on his face. Thornridge holds its presence in both physical and intangible ways. Shadows linger, figures move unseen, and whispers trace the path of visitors. Every element of the twisted trees, the weathered buildings, the fog, and the shifting lights creates an experience that is cinematic, atmospheric, and unforgettable. Even as visitors depart, the memory of Thornridge remains vivid. The cold touches, the figures in the mist, the whispers following every steepa, all linger long after leaving the Village's boundaries. Thornridge is more than a location. It is an experience, a subtle, haunting presence that continues to unfold in memory, ensuring that the Village's enigmatic nature endures in the minds of those who have walked its streets. Every night in Thornridge tells where shadows, whispers, and light intersect, to create a living mystery. It is a village where perception is challenged, where unseen forces shape experience, and where every detail, no matter how small, contributes to a narrative that is at once subtle, engaging, and profoundly haunting. Visitors leave with a sense that Thornridge continues its silent vigil, observing, waiting, and inviting all who enter to witness its enduring, enigmatic presence. Mistwood Village lies hidden deep within the dense forest, a place where sunlight struggles to pierce through the thick canopy. The roads leading to it are narrow and winding, lined with towering trees whose branches reach like skeletal arms across the path. As visitors approach, the village seems almost suspended in time, its buildings warm but intact, standing silently amidst the overgrowth. Upon entering, one immediately senses the presence of the unseen. Doors stand slightly ajar, and sometimes, as if guided by invisible hands, they swing slowly open or closed. The air feels heavier here, charged with a quiet anticipation, as though the village itself is watching and waiting. Figures appear briefly at the edges of vision, lingering in doorways or near broken windows before vanishing without a trace. They are indistinct at first, mere shadows shaped like people, but their movements are purposeful, almost deliberate. Visitors report a sense of being followed, a subtle awareness of eyes on them even when no one is visible. This presence is not threatening in a conventional sense, yet carries a tension that is impossible to ignore. Inside the buildings, the atmosphere grows more intense. Floors creak under weight that should not exist, and faint whispers echo down empty hallways. Lights flicker in rooms long abandoned, casting fleeting glows that illuminate corners where nothing should be. Shadows twist and stretch unnaturally across walls, creating shapes that seem to move independently, as if the village itself has a pulse. The forest surrounding Mistwood adds to its mystery. The sound of rustling leaves and snapping twigs can be felt more than heard, sometimes occurring precisely where no one stands. The wind carries strange murmurs that seem almost intelligible, drifting across the village streets and through open windows. Even the most skeptical visitor cannot help but pause, feeling that something just beyond perception is observing and interacting with them. Exploring the village at night amplifies every sensation. The darkness thickens, and the silhouettes of the old buildings blend with the shadows of the trees. Every step echoes louder than expected, yet footsteps from other directions answer in turn, as if the village itself walks alongside the visitor. Windows gleam faintly with reflections of figures that vanish when looked at directly, leaving only the memory of a presence that was never fully seen. Despite its desolation, Mistwood retains the traces of life. Chairs are slightly shifted, objects lie in places that seem intentional, and doors open or close in ways that suggest guidance. Each anomaly builds a narrative that visitors cannot entirely decipher, a story told in fleeting impressions rather than words. The fog that occasionally drifts through the streets adds another layer of intrigue. It rolls silently between buildings, curling around corners and softening edges, making familiar shapes appear distorted and strange. Shadows merge with the mist, producing illusions of movement where none exists. Figures can appear in the fog and vanish just as quickly, leaving observers questioning what is real and what is imagined. Visiting Ashwood is a journey of awareness. Every creak, every flicker of light, every subtle change in temperature contributes to an environment where perception is heightened, ordinary objects take on significance, and ordinary sounds are transformed into messages from an unseen world. The village does not reveal its secrets all at once. It offers fragments, fleeting moments, that hint at a deeper presence, woven into the very fabric of the place. Some visitors have reported standing in empty rooms only to feel a brush against their skin or sense someone moving behind them. Doors have been known to lock and unlock without cause, and lights can ignite or extinguish spontaneously. These occurrences are subtle yet persistent, creating an atmosphere of quiet unease that makes every moment in Ashwood feel charged with significance. Even as visitors leave, the village continues to exert its influence. Memories of cold touches, shadowy figures, and flickering lights linger long after departure. The forest seems to hold on to them, its trees whispering secrets carried by the wind. Ashwood is a place that refuses to be forgotten, a living memory that exists in the interplay of shadow and light, presence and absence. Ashwood Village is not a location of overt terror, but of subtle hauntings and mysteries that unfold gradually, that challenges perception, drawing attention to the unnoticed, and encouraging visitors to sense the unseen. Every shadow, every echo, every flicker of light contributes to a story that is both enigmatic and compelling, leaving a lasting impression that resonates long after one has walked its fog-laden streets. The village preserves its secrets patiently, allowing only glimpses of its inhabitants and history. Each visitor experiences it differently, yet all share the sense that Ashwood is alive in a way that transcends the physical. It is a place of quiet suspense, of spectral impressions and lingering presence, where the boundaries between the seen and unseen are blurred, and where every moment offers a reminder of the mysteries that dwell in silence. Ashwood Village remains hidden, yet vibrant in its spectral life. It is a space where time feels suspended, and where those who enter are invited to witness the lingering echoes of the past. Its buildings, fog, and surrounding forest create an immersive experience of observation and interaction with the invisible. For those who wander its streets, Ashwood is an encounter with the unknown, a haunting journey that is as captivating as it is mysterious. Silent Pines is a village tucked deep within a dense forest, where the tall pines block sunlight and the air is thick with mist. The streets are narrow and lined with weathered wooden homes, each one standing as a silent sentinel over the history of those who once lived there. Visitors often describe a stillness that feels almost unnatural, a quiet that presses in from every direction, broken only by distant creaks of wood or the whisper of wind through the needles. Broken only by distant creaks of wood or the whisper of wind through the needles. As dusk falls, shadows stretch long across the empty village squares. Figures appear at the edges of vision, fleeting and indistinct. Silhouettes glide silently along the streets, pausing for moments before vanishing into the fog. Travelers speak of turning a corner only to see a figure vanish from view, leaving behind a lingering sense that someone or something has been watching. The fog that gathers in Silent Pines is unlike any ordinary mist. It creeps along the ground, twisting around tree trunks and curling into doorways. Within it, shapes form and dissolve, and whispers echo faintly as though the village itself is trying to communicate. Names and half-formed words drift across the squares, carried by a wind that seems to know the exact path of anyone walking through it. Old lanterns hang from posts and porches, many broken or dim, yet times they glow faintly without power. Their light catches on windows where no one resides, illuminating rooms filled with shadows that move independently of any living occupant. Steps echo on empty porches, doors creak without wind, and floors groan under invisible weight. Every sound seems amplified, reminding visitors that Silent Pines is far from empty. The homes themselves tell a story of time suspended. Paint peels from walls, shutters hang crookedly, and porches sag under decades of weather. Yet there's a presence within each structure. Figures can sometimes be seen moving behind windows, pause and look outward, only to vanish when approached. The air feels heavier near certain buildings, as though memories of long-gone residents cling stubbornly to the space they once occupied. Travelers often report the sensation of being followed. Footsteps mirror their own along the cobblestone streets. Yet when they turn, there is nothing there. Occasionally, a shadow lingers at the edge of vision, just beyond the corner of a window, in the fog between trees. Some have felt eyes watching from darkened alleyways, or from the spaces between buildings. The feeling is subtle but undeniable, leaving a chill that lingers long after leaving the village. The village square is the heart of Silent Pines. It is open and barren, yet alive with presence. Fog gathers thickest here, rolling in and out, revealing and concealing shapes that move with the mist. Old benches and a central fountain appear to shift subtly when unobserved, as though the village itself rearranges its memory for those who pass through. Whispers seem to originate here, faint voices calling from the shadows, fragments of conversations long ago forgotten yet somehow preserved. Time moves differently within Silent Pines. Daylight can stretch in odd ways, and night feels longer, denser, as though the fog holds in place. Travelers often lose track of hours, noticing only the subtle shift of light through fog-laden windows or the gradual creak of a sign swinging in the wind. Even brief visits leave a sense of timelessness, an impression that the village exists slightly apart from the world outside, suspended in quiet observation. The forest surrounding Silent Pines plays its part in the haunting. Pines sway in unnatural patterns, casting elongated shadows across the streets. Fog spills down from the hills, covering paths and turning familiar landmarks into unfamiliar shapes. Figures sometimes appear emerging from the forest edge, gliding toward the village and fading before reaching the streets. It is as if the village and the forest are connected, each responding to the presence of the other, shaping the experience of those who enter. Silent Pines is not threatening in a direct sense, but there is a constant tension, a feeling that the village is aware of every action. Whispers carry warnings, guidance, or perhaps merely acknowledgement. The fog and shadows respond to movement, and visitors often feel their attention subtly guided along streets, toward doorways, or past buildings that seem to have a life of their own. The village is alive in a quiet, deliberate way that defies the ordinary understanding of life. As night deepens, the fog thickens, swallowing light and sound. Shadows lengthen and merge. Figures appear more frequently, and whispers grow more distinct. Footsteps echo along deserted streets. Doors open and close without reason, and faint shapes move at the edges of perception. Travelers often pause, feeling the weight of unseen eyes, sensing that the village remembers everyone who has walked its streets, even for a moment. Those who leave Silent Pines carry the experience with them. The shapes, whispers, and lingering sensation of being watched remain in memory, a quiet unease that refuses to fade. The village, shrouded in fog and silence, leaves an impression that endures far beyond the physical visit. It is a place suspended between presence and absence, where the unseen and the known coexist, and every visitor senses that the pines themselves bear witness to it all. Silent Pines endures as a village of quiet observation. Shadows move, fog gathers, and whispers echo for those who listen. The streets are empty yet alive, the homes abandoned yet full of memory, and the forest and village together create an environment where perception bends, and the unseen feels tangible. Visitors leave change, carrying with them the echo of a place that watches, waits, and remembers. Graywood sits in a valley shrouded in dense, creeping fog that never seems to fully lift. During the day, the village appears ordinary, with narrow cobblestone streets winding between rows of aging houses. Smoke curls lazily from chimneys, and the faint scent of wet earth hangs in the air. Birds move through the trees with quiet urgency, their calls muffled by the thick mist. Birds move through the trees with quiet urgency, their calls muffled by the thick mist. As dusk approaches, Graywood begins to transform. The fog grows heavier, rolling across streets and alleyways in slow, deliberate waves. Street lamps flicker dimly through the mist, casting halos of light that barely illuminate the surroundings. Shadows stretch and twist, moving in ways that seem almost sentient. The village feels alive, but in a way that unsettles the mind, as if it is watching and waiting for visitors to make a misstep. Figures are often seen along narrow alleys and at the edges of doorways. They appear briefly, sometimes just a flicker of movement, and vanish when approached. The fog amplifies these encounters, turning ordinary shapes into phantom silhouettes that haunt the senses. Footsteps echo in the empty streets, soft at first, then growing louder as if someone is pacing just behind. Visitors have felt a presence following them, a cold awareness lingering at the back of their minds. When they turn, no one is there, yet the footsteps continue, almost in rhythm with their own. Even familiar streets become disorienting under the veil of fog, twisting and turning unexpectedly, leading wanderers in circles or down alleys they did not intend to follow. The architecture of Graywood contributes to its unnerving atmosphere. Old stone buildings lean toward one another, casting dark shadows across narrow lanes. Windows dark and unlit seem to hold eyes within, watching silently. Doors creak with the slightest breeze, even in the absence of wind, and shutters rattle softly against the walls. Every detail, from the crooked chimneys to the uneven cobblestones, adds to the sense that the village is not quite what it seems. The fog itself carries sounds in strange ways. Distant water from a nearby river murmurs with a low, almost human intonation. Leaves scrape across walls with a whisper that is almost intelligible. Voices carry strangely, sometimes faint cries or laughter drifting to the streets, impossible to locate or confirm. Visitors often describe the sensation of hearing something just beyond comprehension, a presence brushing against perception without fully revealing itself. Trees surrounding Graywood seem to participate in the village's spectral aura. Branches arch and twist like long fingers reaching into the fog. Shadows among the trees move independently, giving the impression that something steps lightly through the undergrowth. The interplay of light, shadow, and mist creates shapes that appear almost human, yet fleetingly unreal. Even experienced travelers feel a subtle disorientation, a constant doubt about what is solid and what is a trick of the environment. The village itself seems to shift subtly in the night. Streets appear longer or shorter, alleyways twist unexpectedly, and buildings seem closer or farther apart than they did moments before. This dislocation is never permanent, but it adds to the sensation of stepping into a place where the normal rules of space do not fully apply. Every encounter, whether a fleeting figure, a whisper, or a footstep, that Graywood exists partially in another dimension, straddling the boundary between reality and something unseen. Even the simplest acts, such as walking down a street or peering into a window, can become laden with unease. The movement of fog, and the muffled echo of distant sounds combine to create an atmosphere thick with tension. It is a place where the ordinary is subtly distorted, and where the senses are constantly challenged to distinguish between the real and the spectral. Graywood leaves an impression that lingers long after leaving. Visitors carry with them memories of fog-filled streets, vanishing figures, and footsteps that seem to follow in perfect rhythm with their own. The village maintains its mysteries well, wrapped in mist and silence, holding on to secrets of presence and absence. It is a place where the living and the unseen intersect, a village that quietly exists at the edge of perception, leaving every visitor with a lingering sense of unease and awe. Those who walk Graywood at night quickly realize that it is not a village to be fully understood. Its streets, alleys, and shadowed corners hold experiences that are both fleeting and unforgettable. Every step, every whisper of wind, and every ghostly form contributes to the narrative of a place that is alive in ways unseen. Graywood endures as a village where the boundary between what is real and what is imagined is fragile, and where the fog carries the secrets of countless unseen watchers. Shad lies shrouded in a perpetual veil of mist that drifts along narrow streets and curls around weathered buildings. The village seems caught between time and memory, where light bends softly against damp stone and fog drapes itself over every corner. Even in the brightness of day, an air of quiet anticipation lingers, suggesting that the streets themselves are alive, watching and waiting. Visitors often report feeling cold breezes brush across their shoulders in places where no windows or doors are open. The chill is sudden, lingering, and almost deliberate, as though the air itself carries the echoes of those who once walked these streets. Whispers follow quietly, soft and insistent, drifting along alleyways, turning corners, and settling in empty courtyards. It is a sound that seems to arise from the fog, yet has an unmistakable sense of presence. Windows throughout Shad are not merely glass and frame. They become portal for observation, where figures appear for moments before vanishing as silently as they came. Sometimes they linger long enough for visitors to glimpse faces that are pale and indistinct, their eyes fixed and unblinking. The effect is disquieting, as if the village remembers those who once lived here and chooses to reveal them selectively. In the alleys, the most unsettling phenomena often appear in the form of children at play. Travelers have reported fleeting glimpses of ghostly figures running between walls, laughter echoing softly yet fading before it can be located. The children seem unaware of observers, their motions graceful and unnervingly smooth, vanishing when approached. It is an image that combines innocence with unease, leaving a lasting impression on those who witness it. The architecture of Shad contributes to its spectral ambience. Buildings lean close together, their facades darkened by age and moisture. Cobblestone streets wind unpredictably, leading to courtyards that appear larger or smaller than anticipated. Doors sometimes shift, opening or closing without cause, their hinges creaking as if sighing under the weight of memory. Every step to the village is layered with uncertainty, tension, and subtle reminders that the ordinary rules of reality may not fully apply here. Fog clings most densely to the edges of the village, obscuring sight lines and muting sound. Shapes and forms appear and disappear within this haze, blurring the distinction between solid objects and apparitions. Figures sometimes walk along streets in the distance, moving with deliberate slowness or vanishing entirely when approached. The effect is disorienting, reinforcing the sense that Shad exists partially in another plane, where perception is as much a part of the experience as the buildings themselves. Even in daytime, visitors are struck by the silence. Footsteps echo unnaturally, carried farther than they should, and the occasional whisper rides a wind with no visible source. Shadows stretch unnaturally along walls, sometimes forming shapes that mimic movement, appearing more substantial than the dim light allows. Each element of the village contributes to a subtle, continuous atmosphere of mystery, drawing observers deeper into its quiet, fog-laden streets. Nightfall in Shad intensifies its presence, and the village feels smaller and more intimate, as if the streets themselves contract and shift, their forms lingering just long enough to be recognized, and then vanishing without warning. Cold spots appear unexpectedly, brushing past bodies and heightening awareness of the unseen. Whispers become more persistent, their cadence uneven, calling out names or phrases that fade before comprehension. Travelers often describe a sense of being followed even when alone. The alleys and courtyards seem to respond to movement, guiding or misleading in subtle ways. Footsteps that are not their own fall behind or beside them, echoing in harmony with the rhythm of their steps. The children in the mist appear and disappear unpredictably, a reminder that Shad is alive with its own rhythm, separate from the outside world. The environment of the village participates actively in this experience. The fog, the wind, the shifting shadows, and the intermittent light all serve to create a layered narrative that is both immersive and continuous. Buildings, streets, and natural elements seem to store memories, releasing them in fragmented glimpses that engage perception and imagination. Every corner, every doorway, every alley becomes a canvas upon which the unseen writes its presence. Even after leaving Shadowmist, the impressions remain vivid. The icy touches, the fleeting figures, and the whispers echo in memory, reinforcing the sense that the village continues to exist beyond physical boundaries. It is a place where perception and presence intertwine, where ordinary reality is subtly reshaped, and where every detail contributes to a sustained atmosphere of intrigue and unease. Shad Dalmas tells its story without words, relying on light, fog, movement, and sound to communicate with those who enter. Each encounter is unique, layered with tension and curiosity, creating a continuous narrative that is both engaging and haunting. The village is a living, breathing entity, a place where the past is never entirely gone, where whispers, shadows, and figures continue to roam, and where the unseen remains present in every step, glance, and shiver wind. Thornfield lies tucked away beneath a canopy of ancient trees, their gnarled branches reaching across narrow cobblestone streets like protective guardians of a bygone era. The village feels suspended in time, as if the modern world has passed it by, leaving only echoes of its history lingering in the fog that drifts constantly between buildings. Visitors often notice the silence first, a stillness that is deeper than ordinary calm. It is a quiet that carries weight, where each footstep seems amplified and every breath can be heard. In the corners of the streets and alleys, shadowy figures appear and vanish, moving with deliberate purpose. They are fleeting glimpses, outlines of people who belong to another time, drifting silently through the village as if performing a ritual only they understand. The buildings themselves seem to hold memory. Windows, some cracked and weathered, reflect shadows that are not present when one looks directly. Doors sway slightly on old hinges, as if nudged by unseen hands. Inside, the air grows cooler, and rooms seem to breathe with an invisible presence. Some visitors report feeling a brush against their shoulder, a fleeting touch that is gone before it can be confirmed. Faint music sometimes drifts through the fog, melodies without source or origin. Notes hang in the air, soft and haunting, curling around corners and slipping through open windows. There are no instruments to be seen, yet the sound is unmistakable, a lingering resonance that follows visitors as they wander through narrow streets. It is not loud, but persistent, adding a layer of surreal tension to the experience. Exploring the alleys, one encounters shadows that do not belong to any known source. The fog seems to magnify these illusions, thickening around the feet and ankles of explorers, making familiar shapes appear distorted and strange. Figures appear briefly at thresholds, standing perfectly still before fading into the mist, leaving a lingering sense of being watched. The village is not violent, but its presence is undeniable. Footsteps echo without origin, and the occasional creak of a floorboard seems synchronized with the visitor's own movements. Light shifts subtly throughout the day, casting long, eerie shadows that seem to stretch and reach across walls and streets. Even in daylight, Thornfield carries the weight of unseen observers, an almost sentient awareness that the village itself is alive in ways beyond ordinary perception. Trees lining the streets are ancient and imposing, their roots twisting to the earth and stone, creating natural arches over pathways. The canopy filters sunlight into muted, dappled patterns, giving the village a subdued glow even at midday. In the fog, these trees become skeletal silhouettes, shadows moving with the breeze, as if they are extensions of the unseen inhabitants. Visitors often pause beneath them, sensing eyes and presence lingering in the branches and hollows. In the houses and cottages, time seems fractured. Furniture remains arranged as though waiting for occupants long gone. Doors and windows respond unpredictably. Some report whispers drifting from hallways and corners. These sounds are layered, overlapping with the environment. Nightfall intensifies the village's enigmatic aura. The fog thickens, enveloping buildings and alleys in a dense shroud. Shadows move across streets with a deliberate, almost choreographed rhythm. The distant echoes of music persist, now clearer, though still untraceable. Figures appear and vanish more frequently. Their presence felt more than seen, leaving visitors with persistent awareness that they are not alone. Even the air carries a sense of narrative. The scent of earth, wood, and fog combines into a perfume that is both grounding and otherworldly. Every sensory detail reinforces the feeling that Thornfield is more than a village. It is a living story, unfolding around those who enter its streets, offering glimpses of the past while remaining firmly anchored in an elusive present. This is a living story, unfolding around those who enter its streets, offering glimpses of the past while remaining firmly anchored in an elusive present. Visitors leave Thornfield with impressions rather than answers. They carry memories of fleeting shadows, strange music, and whispered words. The village does not reveal its full story. Instead, offering fragments of experience, moments that linger long after departure. It is a place of quiet suspense, where the boundary between reality and spectral presence blurs, inviting each person to witness the interplay of light, shadow, and sound that defines its essence. Thornfield endures, hidden beneath its ancient trees and shrouded in persistent fog. Its streets, alleys, and buildings are infused with layers of history and subtle hauntings, a living memory that interacts gently yet insistently with those who wander its paths. Time here moves differently, measured not by hours or days, but by encounters, impressions, and fleeting moments that hint at a deeper presence woven into the fabric of the village. To walk Thornfield is to step into a story that is continuously being written, an experience where perception is heightened and every detail matters. Shadows, music, whispers, and fog combine to create a cinematic atmosphere, immersive and unforgettable. Visitors sense the village-esque awareness, a quiet intelligence that observes and interacts, offering a haunting, reflective, and deeply engaging journey through one of the most enigmatic corners of the world. Thornfield remains suspended between the seen and unseen, its essence captured in fleeting glimpses and subtle sensations. For those who explore it, the village offers a haunting narrative of presence and absence, light and shadow, sound and silence. It is an encounter with the unknown, a place where every step, every glance, and every whisper reveals layers of mystery that linger long after the fog is cleared. Misty Glen is a village shrouded in perpetual fog, tucked into a narrow valley where sunlight struggles to reach the cobblestone streets. The mist curls through alleyways and drifts across small squares, softening the outlines of buildings and cloaking everything in a veil of uncertainty. Visitors often speak of an unsettling stillness, broken only by faint, untraceable sounds that seem to follow them through the village. As dawn breaks, the fog lingers, thick and unyielding. Figures sometimes appear at the edges of vision, motionless and silent. They stand in alleyways or at doorways, watching without expression. The villagers of old have long since departed, yet the presence of something unseen remains, imprinting itself on every street and home. Doors swing open or close on their own, sometimes revealing empty rooms bathed in soft, dim light. Footsteps echo along hallways where no one walks, and the faint scent of smoke or pine drifts through abandoned homes. Travelers report waking to subtle changes, objects shifted or missing, as if the village itself is rearranging the space to suit its own unseen purposes. The fog carries whispers, soft and indistinct, yet familiar. Visitors sometimes hear their names called from down empty streets, or faint voices murmuring from the corners of their rooms. The sounds are fleeting, vanishing when pursued, leaving behind a chill that seeps into the bones. Even the most skeptical feel an undeniable presence, a consciousness aware of every movement and glance. Lanterns hang from posts along the main street, some glowing dimly even without power. Their light flickers across windows that reflect shadowy figures, sometimes standing still, sometimes moving slowly as if observing. Hallways and staircases echo with imagined footsteps. Doors creak without wind, and the mist seems to shift in response to every human step, guiding, concealing, and revealing with deliberate intention. The village square, though small, becomes a focal point for the strange activity. Fog curls around benches and fountains, forming shapes that linger just out of reach. Shadows gather and dissipate with the changing wind, and some visitors swear they have glimpsed figures crossing from one alley to another, yet when they turn, nothing remains. Every sound is amplified in the thick air, every whisper carrying weight beyond its faint tone. Misty Glen has a rhythm of its own. Time appears distorted within the fog. Days stretch and nights deepen. The mist softens edges and distorts perception. Travelers have reported the sensation of walking in circles, returning to the same street despite choosing different paths. The village seems alive in quiet, subtle ways, responding to those who enter, marking their presence and altering the experience for each person differently. The homes, many abandoned and weathered, tell their own story. Windows rattle with no wind. Shutters swing without touch. And faint figures appear behind curtains. Some rooms are colder than others. And in these spaces, whispers grow clearer, as if the echoes of past lives have condensed into the atmosphere. Objects may move slightly. Doors open slowly. And the faintest sounds of footsteps on creaking floors follow visitors, even when no one is visible. Alleyways and side streets are particularly active. Shadows linger and dissolve in the corners of vision, and mist gathers thickest here, obscuring familiar shapes, creating phantom pathways. Figures sometimes emerge in the fog, only to disappear again, leaving a lingering sense of being watched. The interplay of fog and shadow heightens attention, making even a brief walk to the village a test of perception and courage. Visitors often describe an awareness that extends beyond sight and sound. The air carries a weight, a presence that seems to observe, respond, and remember. Even when alone, the feeling of being followed is almost inescapable. Every step, every glance, every small movement is registered in the fabric of Misty Glen, creating a sense that the village is conscious and subtly interacting with those who traverse it. As evening falls, the mist thickens and the shadows lengthen. Lanterns flicker on, hallways echo with soft creaks. Whispering voices become more insistent. Figures appear briefly in the fog, then vanish as if they never existed. Visitors walking through streets and squares sense unseen eyes tracking them. A silent attention that feels personal and ever-present. The village itself becomes a living entity, a place where the line between the natural and the supernatural blurs. Leaving Misty Glen does not always erase its impressions. Visitors often carry with them a lingering sense of unease, fleeting shapes in the corner of their eyes, and echoes of whispers that drift through memory. The fog, shadows, and unseen presence imprint themselves in ways both subtle and profound, leaving an indelible mark on those who have walked its streets. Misty Glen endures as a village suspended between worlds. Its fog-laden streets, shadowy figures, and whispering voices create an environment where perception bends and reality feels uncertain. Every visitor experiences a village differently, yet all are united by the quiet, watchful presence that defines it. Here, the unseen is as tangible as a mist, and every step becomes a journey into the unknown. Fogwood lies tucked within a valley where fog drifts like a living entity. During daylight, the village seems ordinary enough, with weathered stone cottages and narrow lanes that wind unpredictably between trees and low hills. Smoke curls from chimneys, blending into the morning mist, and the air carries the faint scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. As evening falls, the fog thickens, rolling across streets and alleyways in slow, deliberate waves. The village transforms into a place that feels both familiar and foreign. Street lamps cast dim halos through the haze, illuminating shapes that are difficult to distinguish. Shadows stretch unnaturally along walls and cobblestones, moving in ways that feel deliberate, almost alive. The silence is broken only by the whisper of wind, which seems to carry voices that cannot be traced. Visitors often notice figures appearing along streets and in windows. They are fleeting, sometimes glimpsed for only a moment, vanishing when approached. The figures move with an ease that seems impossible, gliding along cobblestones or peering silently from darkened doorways. Their presence is unsettling, leaving a chill that lingers in the air long after they disappear. The fog amplifies every encounter, turning ordinary shapes into ghostly forms that haunt perception. Footsteps echo unexpectedly, soft at first and then closer, as though someone is following from behind. Travelers describe the sensation of being watched, of feeling a presence lingering just beyond their awareness. When they turn, nothing is there, yet the sound persists, a rhythm in step with their own movements. Even familiar streets feel disorienting, as alleys twist and open into spaces that seem both known and strange. The architecture of Fogwood enhances its eerie atmosphere. Buildings lean toward one another, their rooftops steep and dark against the fog. Windows are shadowed and unlit, giving the impression of eyes that watch silently. Doors creak and shutters rattle with the slightest breeze, even in the absence of wind. The irregular cobblestones and uneven streets amplify the sense of instability, making every step feel uncertain and precarious. Fogwood seems to manipulate sound in subtle ways. The river murmurs with an unusual resonance, carrying low tones that resemble distant voices. Leaves scrape walls with whispers, and the fog itself seems to carry the soft, persistent echo of names being called. Guests report hearing these sounds drifting around corners, through alleyways, and into homes that are empty. The voices are neither threatening nor clear, but they leave a lingering unease. The trees surrounding the village are twisted and ancient. Their gnarled branches stretch into the fog, creating dark silhouettes that appear to move independently. Shadows among the trees shift with imperceptible speed, giving the impression that something steps lightly through the undergrowth. Shapes that appear human flicker in and out of view, blended with the fog and confusing the senses. Even seasoned travelers feel the environment bending subtly around them, a living landscape of shadow and mist. As night deepens, Fogwood streets and alleys seem to shift. Paths lengthen or narrow without warning, and familiar landmarks appear displaced. Buildings appear closer or farther apart, windows and doorways seemingly rearranged. These changes are subtle and disorienting, creating the feeling that the village exists partially out of sync with the physical world. Every glimpse of figure, every whisper, every soft footstep reinforces the sensation of being in a place that exists both here and elsewhere. Visitors often speak of the emotional weight of the village. The air is heavy with a sense of unseen presence. Each step feels like an interaction with something unseen, a delicate balance between caution and curiosity. Even ordinary tasks, such as walking down a street or peering into a window, are imbued with tension. Shadows at the edge of vision, and the movement of the fog keeps senses on high alert. Fogwood leaves a lasting impression. Those who walk its streets remember the figures that appear and vanish, the footsteps that echo without source, and the whispers that seem to call their names softly and persistently. The village endures as a space where the boundary between reality and something unseen is thin, where fog, shadow, and sound converge to create an environment that is alive in ways beyond comprehension. Every visitor carries with them a memory of Fogwood, its ethereal presence. The village streets, alleys, and shadowed corners hold experiences both fleeting and unforgettable. The fog weaves its way around buildings, drifting through windows and doors, carrying secrets that remain just beyond understanding. Fogwood is a village that exists in the liminal space between the familiar and the spectral, leaving all who enter with a lingering sense of awe, unease, and the feeling that the unseen watches silently. Hollow Glen sits nestled in a valley where the hills rise sharply and the trees crowd closely, their branches interweaving to create shadows that stretch unnaturally across the streets. At night, a sudden fog rolls in, dense and chilling, swallowing streetlights and muffling sound. The village seems to contract under the weight of mist, leaving travelers with a heightened sense of awareness, where every footstep feels amplified and every sound is potentially alive. Figures appear along the streets, moving silently without urgency, as if they are part of the fog itself. Their presence is fleeting yet unmistakable, glimpsed in the corner of the eye before vanishing when approached. The motions are deliberate but subtle, creating the impression that Hollow Glen is not empty, even when its streets appear deserted. Shadows stretch and twist along walls, forming shapes that are familiar yet impossible to fully define. Windows throughout the village take on an eerie life of their own. Pale faces are reported peering through glass panes, their features indistinct but undeniably human. They observe without motion, holding a gaze that seems aware of every passerby. Sometimes the faces appear briefly before retreating into darkness, leaving an unsettling sensation of being watched, a silent reminder that the village retains its own consciousness. The fog carries sounds that are not entirely explainable. Whispers drift along the streets, following travelers as if the air itself is aware of their presence. The words are faint, sometimes just a syllable or a name, dissolving as quickly as they arrive. Footsteps echo differently in Hollow Glen, often sounding heavier or lighter than reality dictates. Every sound interacts with the environment, creating a dynamic, almost responsive atmosphere that engages both the senses and the imagination. Buildings in Hollow Glen lean closely together, their facades worn with age and moisture. Doors shift without wind or touch, creaking open or close, hinting at unseen activity within. Courtyards and narrow alleyways feel alive, as if they contain memories of countless moments, all layered atop one another. Each corner turn presents uncertainty, a mixture of anticipation and unease, as though the village itself is guiding or observing each visitor. Travelers often report sensations of cold, as if icy fingers brush past shoulders or along the back and neck, always in places that are otherwise undisturbed. The sensation is fleeting yet memorable, reinforcing the idea that Hollow Glen exists with its own unseen inhabitants. Even brief glances into doorways, alleyways, or the shadows under trees can create the impression of movement, suggesting that life persists quietly and independently from human observation. The village seems particularly attentive to those who linger. Steps echo in harmony with the rhythm of a traveller pace, and distant figures may mirror movements only to vanish the instant they are confronted. Alleyways can seem longer or shorter than they should, curving in ways that defy expectation, creating subtle disorientation. The fog thickens unpredictably, obscuring vision and heightening awareness of every minor shift in light or sound. Night intensifies the sense of Hollow Glen as a place suspended between reality and memory. The pale faces at windows become more distinct, lingering long enough for recognition, but always retreating before comprehension. Shadows stretch unnaturally across walls and streets, sometimes forming shapes that are vaguely humanoid. Figures appear along alleys and streets, always at a distance at first, moving with deliberate slowness before fading into mist. The environment itself seems to participate actively in the experience. Fog, wind, and the village-esque architecture combine to create a layered narrative of presence and absence. Every creaking sign, shifting door, or flicker of light contributes to the sensation that Hollow Glen remembers its past and continues to interact with the present. The village is a living canvas where perception and imagination shape an encounter that is immersive and continuous. Even after leaving, Hollow Glen lingers in memory. The icy touches, fleeting figures, and whispered names remain vivid, creating an impression that the village exists beyond physical boundaries. Travelers often recall the sensation of being observed, the disorienting streets, and the moments when figures appear just at the edge of sight. Hollow Glen is a place where shadows and fog carry a subtle narrative, a persistent, living presence that intertwines with those who wander its streets. The village tells its story without words, relying on the interplay of mist, movement, and sound. Every step and glance provides a new layer of intrigue, drawing visitors deeper into its atmosphere of quiet unease. Hollow Glen remains a realm where the ordinary rules of time and space are subtly bent, a place where past and present coexist, and where unseen observers linger silently among the fog, watching, waiting, and shaping the experience of those who dare to enter. Raven Mist is a village shrouded in perpetual fog, a place where the air feels heavier and the streets are always veiled in a gray, ethereal haze. Travelers often speak of the first sensation they encounter upon arrival, a sudden chill brushing across their shoulders, a cold touch that seems to belong to no one visible. It is as if the village itself breathes, exhaling a presence that is simultaneously inviting and unsettling. The streets of Raven Mist are narrow and winding, lined with buildings that lean slightly as if whispering secrets to one another. Figures appear at the edges of vision, half-formed silhouettes moving silently along the cobblestones. They vanish when approached, leaving behind only the faintest trace of movement in the fog. Observers describe the sensation of being watched, an invisible presence keeping pace alongside them as they navigate the alleys and corners of the village. Fog is a constant companion in raven mist, thickening at times to obscure everything beyond a few feet. Within it, sounds travel differently. Whispers carry with clarity, drifting from unseen corners and calling names long forgotten. Voices speak in tones both gentle and urgent, weaving through the air to brush against ears, lingering just beyond comprehension. It is not threatening, but the effect is profound, leaving visitors tense and alert with the sense that the village remembers them in ways they cannot see. Leaving visitors tense and alert with the sense that the village remembers them in ways they cannot see. Buildings in raven mist are old, their facades weathered by wind and moisture, yet they retain a stubborn dignity. Windows are fogged or cracked, and doors sometimes move slightly on creaking hinges, as if disturbed by invisible hands. Inside, the air feels cooler, heavier, as though history itself has settled into the walls. Visitors often feel sudden shifts in temperature, cold spots appearing without warning, heightening the sensation that unseen entities are nearby. Some who walk the village at night speak of figures standing at the intersections of streets, their forms illuminated briefly by the diffused light of lamps hidden in fog. These figures appear human, yet their movements are unnatural, gliding rather than walking. They vanish when attention is focused, leaving no trace beyond the echo of footsteps or the fading impression of shadow. It is as if they exist only to remind the living that the village holds more than meets the eye. Exploration of raven mist is both disorienting and mesmerizing. Alleyways lead to unexpected courtyards, and narrow streets open onto open squares that seem almost too large, too empty, holding space for memories rather than people. Figures can appear in any of these spaces, momentary companions to travelers who sense but cannot see them fully. The village carries the weight of time. Each building, street, and alley seems to contain layers of history, echoing events long past. Visitors have reported hearing footsteps that do not match their own, and doors that open or close without cause. These occurrences are subtle yet persistent, reinforcing the notion that the village is alive with memories that refuse to fade. Shadows linger longer than they should, and reflections in windows sometimes show more than the immediate surroundings, hinting at moments from another era. Sounds in raven mist are amplified by the fog and silence. A distant cough, the rustle of clothing, or a faint scraping sound carries across the streets. Occasionally, music drifts through the air, notes that seem to originate from nowhere, haunting and melancholic. It is never loud, yet its presence is unmistakable, creating a sense of tension and wonder as visitors attempt to locate its source. The combination of sound and fog crafts an environment that feels alive and watchful, yet eerily still. Night deepens a village's mysterious atmosphere. Shadows lengthen and twist in ways that defy logic. Figures appear closer, and the whispers grow more distinct, calling names with familiarity that is unsettling. Every corner holds potential surprises, and even familiar streets feel alien in the thickening fog. The air carries a subtle scent of earth and moisture, intensifying perception that this is a place suspended between worlds, where past and present intermingle seamlessly. Visitors often leave raven mist change, carrying with them an impression of a place alive with unseen residents. The village does not threaten, yet it commands attention and respect, a living reminder that the world is larger and stranger than it appears. The streets, alleys, and fog are a stage upon which figures move silently, whispering the stories of those who came before and reminding the living that every presence leaves an imprint, however fleeting. Raven mist endures, cloaked in fog and memory. Its alleys, streets, and buildings are infused with an invisible life, a subtle intelligence that interacts with those who wander its paths. Each encounter is unique, yet all share the same feeling of being part of something larger, a story woven into the fabric of fog, stone, and time. To step into raven mist is to enter a world where every sense is heightened. Shadows twist, fog thickens, and unseen presences watch patiently. Whispers drift past ears, footsteps echo, and fleeting touches brush against shoulders. Time seems to bend, revealing only fragments of a narrative that is alive and ongoing. The village holds its secrets closely, revealing them only in moments that linger, creating an experience that is immersive, haunting, and unforgettable. Raven Mist is a place of memory, shadow, and fog. Figures appear and vanish. Whispers carry names from the past, and cold touches remind visitors of the presence of unseen companions. It is a village alive in ways that defy explanation, a cinematic, atmospheric environment where tension, mystery, and curiosity intertwine. For those who wander its streets, every step, glance, and breath reveals layers of a story that continues long after the fog has lifted. Silent Hollow lies deep within a secluded valley, its streets overgrown with weeds and its houses standing empty, yet somehow alive with a presence that cannot be seen. The village has long been abandoned, but those who venture here speak of an unsettling feeling, as though the shadows themselves are watching, waiting, and moving with silent intent. As the morning fog drifts through the streets, the outlines of old buildings take on a softened, almost ethereal quality. Windows gape like dark eyes, and doors hang slightly ajar, creaking gently in the wind, or opening without warning. The air carries a chill that seems heavier than the temperature suggests, seeping into clothes, skin, and bone, leaving visitors with a lingering sense of unease. Figures appear at the edges of vision, fleeting glimpses that vanish when looked at directly. Some travelers have reported the sensation of icy hands brushing their shoulders or arms, a touch without form, fleeting but unmistakable. They stand in doorways, along sidewalks, or behind broken fences, motionless yet impossibly present. Footsteps echo down empty streets, yet no one is visible, and the sound does not match the weight of the earth beneath. Inside the abandoned homes, silence reigns, punctuated by occasional groans of shifting wood. And the faint whisper of wind through broken panes. Doors swing open slowly, revealing empty rooms where dust settles undisturbed. Yet even in the absence of life, the atmosphere feels charged with something unseen, as though the village remembers the presence of those who once walked its streets, and now interacts subtly with those who return. The village square is a study in forgotten life. Shadows pool around corners and between buildings, and some visitors swear they have seen figures cross the square, fading into the mist before reaching the other side. Whispers drift from the hollowed homes, carrying soft syllables that cannot be understood, but evoke a sense of intent, a quiet attention that cannot be ignored. The villagers' whispers seem to carry a hidden meaning, but evoke a sense of intent, a quiet attention that cannot be ignored. Narrow alleyways wind between closely packed houses, and the fog thickens here, muting sound and distorting perception. Shapes form the edges of vision, lingering in the corner of the eye, then dissolve when approached. The village seems to shift subtly, as if guiding visitors along certain paths, shaping the journey to heighten awareness of the unseen. Every step is accompanied by an almost imperceptible pressure in the air, a sense that Silent Hollow is alive in its own way, responding to intrusions into its quiet domain. Old churches and schoolhouses, long abandoned, stand sentinel over the village. Their doors creak with no wind, and shadowed figures are sometimes seen behind cracked windows, peering outward before disappearing into darkness. Visitors report feeling eyes upon them in these spaces, a presence attentive and patient. The silence is punctuated by occasional, inexplicable sounds. The scraping of furniture, the soft tap of footsteps on wooden floors, or the distant murmur of voices too faint to identify. The outskirts of the village are no less unsettling. Overgrown paths and collapsed fences mark the boundary between human habitation and encroaching forest. Mist clings to the edges of the hollow, obscuring vision and creating phantom shapes among the trees. Some who venture here report whispers on the wind, distant yet near, calling names or beckoning with sound that vanish when pursued. The line between imagination and reality becomes thin, leaving a sense of uncertainty and heightened awareness. Even as daylight wanes, the village seems to deepen in presence. Shadows grow longer, merging with the fog that rolls between buildings. Doors continue to open and close without warning, and figures appear briefly at windows or in alleyways, vanishing as if swallowed by the mist. The feeling of being observed intensifies, and some visitors have described an overwhelming impression that the village itself is conscious, moving and responding in ways imperceptible but undeniable. Night in Silent Hollow brings profound stillness. The only sounds are faint and disjointed. Footsteps in empty halls, whispers along streets, and the groan of old timbers settling. Visitors report the sensation of being followed, the brush of unseen hands, and the inexplicable sensation that every movement is mirrored or noted by something unseen. The village exerts a quiet dominion over perception, bending the familiar into the uncanny. Leaving Silent Hollow does not always end the experience. Travelers often carry residual unease, fleeting shapes in their peripheral vision, faint whispers echoing in memory, and the sense that eyes still watch from unseen corners. The village, abandoned yet alive, imprints itself on those who enter, creating a haunting awareness that persists long after the foggy streets have been left behind. Silent Hollow endures as a place between worlds, where the boundaries of reality and the unseen are thin, and the shadows, whispers, and unseen presences make it a living, breathing entity, observed and interactive in subtle, unnerving ways. Those who wander its streets experience an enduring reminder that even in abandonment, some places never truly sleep. Mist Vale sits nestled in a valley where fog rolls like a living tide, curling through streets and alleys, softening the edges of the village in muting sound. During daylight, the town appears ordinary, with weathered cottages and narrow lanes winding between ancient oaks and low stone walls. Smoke drifts lazily from chimneys and carries a faint scent of wet earth and moss, but the atmosphere feels heavier than the air itself, as if something unseen presses close. The atmosphere feels heavier than the air itself, as if something unseen presses close. As evening falls, the fog thickens, swallowing street lamps and bending light into soft halos that make shadows stretch unnaturally along walls and cobblestones. Shapes that seem human appear and disappear, fleeting figures that vanish the moment they are approached. Visitors speak of glimpsing figures standing at the edges of alleys, watching silently, their presence felt more than seen. The fog magnifies every sound and shadow, making ordinary shapes take on strange, spectral qualities. Whispers drift through the streets, soft and insistent, carrying words that cannot be understood yet linger in the mind. Guests report hearing voices coming from empty houses, from windows that hold no light and doors that remain firmly shut. These whispers are faint but persistent, wrapping around the fog and weaving through alleys as though the town itself is alive with memory and intent. Each sound is amplified by the stillness, and even a simple step echoes with significance, carrying tension in its resonance. Mist Vale's architecture contributes to the feeling of unease. The cottages lean toward one another, their rooftops dark and uneven. Doors creak in the slightest breeze, shutters rattle against the frames, and narrow streets twist in ways that can confuse even those familiar with their layout. Every corner turn seems to lead somewhere new or somewhere subtly altered, giving the sense that the village shifts in response to the presence of strangers. The alleys themselves are corridors of uncertainty. Ghostly children are said to appear, their laughter quiet and ephemeral, echoing in the fog before vanishing into the mist. They play silently, moving with a lightness that seems impossible in the damp and heavy air. Their presence is neither threatening nor fully comforting, a reminder that Mist Vale is inhabited by memories and echoes that remain long after those who made them have gone. Trees surrounding the village loom dark and gnarled, their branches twisting into shapes that resemble reaching hands. The fog weaves through their trunks and across roots, and shadows seem to move independently among the trees. Figures appear at a distance, then vanish as quickly as they come, leaving visitors questioning whether what they saw was real or a trick of light and mist. Even familiar paths feel unstable, stretching or narrowing in ways that unsettle perception. The river that skirts the edge of Mistvale contributes its own sounds to the haunted atmosphere. Water moves silently beneath the fog, and its surface catches light in shifting patterns that resemble figures drifting just beneath. Reflections of shadows play across the banks, giving the impression that the town is mirrored in an unseen world. Every sound, from the Rivera-esque murmur to the scrape of leaves in the wind, is amplified, forming a tapestry of sensations that heightens unease and wonder. Visitors often remark on the weight of the village itself. The fog presses in from every side, and the quiet is deeper than silence alone. Every shadow and sound feels deliberate, each step taken on cobblestone carrying tension. Shapes that appear in windows or at street corners seem to observe, to move in response to human presence, leaving the impression that the town itself watches and remembers. There is a sense of temporal distortion, as if Mist Vale exists slightly out of step with the world beyond the fog, where the living and the echoes of the past coexist. As night deepens, the fog seems to thicken further, wrapping the village in a curtain that isolates it completely. Figures along streets and in windows appear more distinct against the muted backdrop, yet they vanish when approached. Whispers become more persistent, and the sense of being observed grows stronger. The town's atmosphere is one of anticipation and memory, a place where unseen presences linger and every detail carries meaning. Mist Vale leaves a lasting impression on those who enter. Guests remember the figures in alleys, the whispers from empty houses, and the fleeting glimpses of ghostly children playing silently. The village is alive with unseen forces, a landscape shaped by memory and fog, where reality is thin and perception is fragile. Every step, every sound, every shadow contributes to a sense of being part of something larger, a haunting that is both beautiful and unsettling, leaving a mark long after the fog has lifted and the village has returned to its quiet daytime appearance. Fogridge is a village that seems suspended between reality and mist. As night falls, a dense fog rolls in from the surrounding hills, swallowing the streets, rooftops, and alleyways. The mist moves like a living thing, curling around corners, settling in low spots and obscuring vision, leaving only vague shapes in its path. It is in this twilight world that the village comes alive with subtle, unexplained activity. Figures are glimpsed along the streets and on rooftops, their movements fluid but silent. Travelers speak of shapes that linger long enough to be noticed, yet disappear without leaving a trace. Each sighting creates a tension, a sense that the village is being watched or that something unseen moves with intent. The fog enhances this uncertainty, turning ordinary walls and fences into shifting boundaries between the known and the unknown. Whispers drift through the village, soft and insistent. Names are called, not in anger or warning, but as though the voices are searching for recognition. The sound seems to come from all directions, sometimes behind, sometimes ahead, dissolving in the mist before a source can be identified. They are a reminder that the village has a memory, a consciousness that observes, interacts, and persists. Buildings in Fogridge are weathered and close together, their old facades leaning over narrow streets. Windows glow faintly, sometimes revealing fleeting figures inside, only to darken as quickly as they appeared. Doors creak and shift as if moved by invisible hands, and occasional lights flicker without electricity. Every element contributes to a sense that the village is alive, responding to the presence of visitors, shaping experience through subtle, unexplained phenomena. The fog heightens the sense of disorientation. Streets appear longer or shorter than expected. Alleyways curve in improbable ways, and familiar paths take on an uncanny quality. Shadows stretch and distort across walls and roofs, forming shapes that suggest human presence but remain impossible to define. The movement of fog, combined with these shadows, where perception becomes uncertain and anticipation grows with every step. Travelers feel sudden cold as icy fingers brush along shoulders or backs. Sensations are fleeting but memorable, reinforcing the idea that the village interacts physically as well as visually. Sounds are amplified or muffled by the mist, with footsteps echoing in unexpected directions. The rustling of unseen movements blends with the natural creaks of old buildings. Every sense is engaged, every moment charged with subtle unease. Rooftops and upper windows are particularly active. Figures appear perched high above streets, watching silently, before dissolving into fog. Their movements are deliberate but ghostly, reinforcing the idea that Fogridge is a place where ordinary rules of presence do not apply. Alleyways and courtyards carry similar activity, with shapes moving just beyond reach and vanishing when confronted. These experiences suggest that the village exists with its own rhythms, independent of human expectation or comprehension. The interplay of mist, shadow, and sound shapes an immersive narrative that is continuous and unpredictable. Each turn of a corner, each glance down a narrow street, brings a possibility of encounter. Whispers, shadows, and figures all combine to create an atmosphere that is simultaneously alive and absent, visible and intangible. Visitors navigate a landscape that seems familiar and alien at once, responding to the presence of the fog and the subtle movements it reveals. Even the smallest details are charged with significance. A flickering light, a shifting shadow, a sudden chill, or the call of a whispered name draws attention and invites interpretation. Every encounter, whether real or imagined, contributes to the Village's identity, leaving a lasting impression on those who traverse its fog-laden streets. Fogridge is not merely a place to pass through. It is a living environment that engages perception, memory, and emotion. Departing the village does not erase its presence. The memory of figures at the edge of vision, the sensation of unseen touches, and the faint calls of voices continue to echo. The fog, shadows, and whispers remain in recollection, shaping understanding of the village as a realm that exists simultaneously within and beyond physical reality. Fogridge leaves travelers with the sense that the unseen is persistent, that every corner, street, and rooftop carries history, observation, and a subtle, continuing life. The village's secrets remain hidden in the fog. The fog, shadows, and whispers remain in recollection, shaping understanding of the village as a realm that exists simultaneously within and beyond physical reality. The unseen is persistent, that the unseen is persistent, that every corner, street, and rooftop carries history, observation, and a subtle, continuing life. The village's secrets remain hidden in the fog. The fog, shadows, and whispers remain in recollection, shaping understanding of the village as a realm that exists simultaneously within and beyond physical reality. The unseen is persistent, that the unseen is persistent, that every corner, street, and rooftop carries history, observation, and a subtle, continuing life. The village's secrets remain hidden in the fog. The fog, shadows, and whispers remain in recollection, shaping understanding of the village as a realm that exists simultaneously within and beyond physical reality. The unseen is persistent, that the unseen is persistent, that every corner, street, and rooftop carries history, observation, and a subtle, continuing life. The village's secrets remain hidden in the fog. The fog, shadows, and whispers remain in recollection, shaping understanding of the village as a realm that exists simultaneously within and beyond physical reality. The unseen is persistent, that the unseen is persistent, that every corner, street, and rooftop carries history, observation, and a subtle, continuing life. The village's secrets remain hidden in the fog. The fog, shadows, and whispers remain in recollection, shaping understanding of the village as a realm that exists simultaneously within and beyond physical reality. The unseen is persistent, that the unseen is persistent, that every corner, street, and rooftop carries history, observation, and a subtle, continuing life. The village's secrets remain hidden in the fog. The fog, shadows, and whispers remain in recollection, shaping understanding of the village as a realm that exists simultaneously within and beyond physical reality. The unseen is persistent, that the unseen is persistent. The village tells its story through mist, movement, and sound, creating a cinematic experience that unfolds in the mind as much as in the streets themselves. Each night in Fogridge is a layered encounter, where reality and perception blend, and every visitor becomes a part of its quiet, mysterious narrative. Figures, whispers, and fog combine to form an environment that is immersive, continuous, and haunting, a place where the ordinary becomes extraordinary, and the unseen presence shapes every step and glance. Shadow Pine is a village hidden among dense forests, where sunlight rarely reaches the ground, and mist lingers long after morning. Travelers arriving here often feel an immediate shift in the air, a chill that crawls across the skin and hints at the presence of something unseen. The village is quiet in a way that feels deliberate, as though the world itself has hushed to observe what moves through the narrow streets and shadowed alleys. Buildings stand as relics of a time long past. Their wooden facades creak with age, and windows are clouded by dust and neglect. At night, faint lights flicker in empty rooms, as if the structures themselves remember the activity of past inhabitants. Observers have described seeing movement behind these lights, fleeting silhouettes that vanish when approached. It is a subtle but persistent reminder that Shadow Pine is more than it seems, a place where the line between the living and the unseen blurs. Alleyways wind unpredictably through the village, sometimes opening onto open squares, sometimes narrowing into paths that vanish into the forest. Figures appear at the edges of vision, moving silently through doorways and across streets. They leave no footprints and make no sound, yet their presence is felt, a quiet tension that follows visitors as they navigate the darkened pathways. Each turn holds a possibility of encountering something fleeting and inexplicable, reinforcing the sense that Shadow Pine is alive in ways the eye cannot always perceive. The fog is a constant companion, curling around corners and blanketing the ground. Whispers travel within it, carried on the wind from empty buildings or distant trees. Voices speak indistinctly, calling names or murmuring fragments of conversations that seem familiar yet unattached to any living person. The sound is subtle but unmistakable, heightening awareness and making each step feel measured. Visitors often pause, straining to hear, only to realize the voices vanish as suddenly as they appear, leaving behind only silence and the lingering chill of unseen attention. Inside the buildings, the temperature shifts unexpectedly. Cold spots appear in hallways and rooms where no windows are open and no ventilation exists. These pockets of chill seem to move with purpose, brushing against shoulders and tracing the contours of visitors as they walk. The sensation is profoundly unnerving. Guests describe it as a presence standing close behind them, invisible yet undeniably there. The effect is compounded by the flickering lights and the quiet hum of the village at night, creating an atmosphere thick with anticipation and unease. Even during the day, Shadow Pine retains a sense of watchfulness. Shadows move in ways that defy the position of the sun, stretching and bending along streets and building facades. Figures appear in doorways, only to vanish when approached. Windows sometimes reflect shapes that are not in the room, fleeting glimpses of movement that dissolve the moment one focuses. Each encounter is brief, almost dreamlike, leaving observers questioning what they saw and feeling the weight of the Village's presence. Sounds in Shadow Pine are amplified by the silence that dominates the streets. A distant creak, a soft footfall, or the rustle of unseen movement can make the hair stand on end. Some have reported faint music drifting from buildings long abandoned, notes that seem to originate from nowhere. The melodies are melancholic and hypnotic, drawing attention and curiosity while enhancing the Village's mysterious ambience. The combination of sound, shadow, and light creates a world that is immersive and slightly disorienting, a place that feels both timeless and suspended between realities. Night deepens the Village's enigmatic qualities. Fog thickens and shadows grow longer, merging and twisting along streets. Figures appear closer, their presence undeniable yet intangible. Whispers gain clarity, calling names or speaking in tones that feel personal, as if the village itself remembers those who enter its boundaries. Every doorway, alley, and window seems to hold potential surprises, reinforcing the notion that Shadow Pine is alive with stories and memories that resist fading into the past. Visitors often leave shadow pine carrying impressions that linger long after they have departed. The chill in the air, the flickering lights, and the whispers embedded in fog create an experience that is hard to forget. Figures move silently, footsteps echo without origin, and cold presences are felt at the periphery of perception. The village does not seek to frighten with violence or overt danger, yet it instills a deep, persistent awareness that it is a place inhabited by more than the living. Shadow Pine endures as a village of memory and mystery. Its buildings, streets, and alleys are infused with subtle presences, moving quietly alongside the living while remaining mostly unseen. Flickering lights, cold touches, and the sound of whispered voices create a continuous narrative, an atmosphere where tension, curiosity, and the unknown intertwine. To step into Shadow Pine is to step into a living story, one that unfolds quietly in fog and shadow, leaving every visitor with a profound sense of having witnessed something that exists just beyond ordinary perception. The village lingers in the mind long after the fog has lifted. Shadows twist, lights flicker, and cold presences brush against those who wander its streets. Whispers echo, figures glide, and every alley holds a memory of the past. Shadow Pine is a place where the ordinary meets the extraordinary, where silence, mist, and unseen inhabitants combine to create a cinematic and atmospheric world. Each moment spent here is immersive, drawing observers into a narrative of subtle mystery and quiet unease. A story that continues long after they have departed. Whispering Hollow sits deep in a valley shrouded by dense fog, its narrow streets winding like veins through a village seemingly forgotten by time. The air is heavy and damp, carrying a chill that seeps into bones and lingers long after leaving. The village feels alive despite its apparent abandonment, as though every shadow and creaking structure participates in a quiet, unseen watchfulness. As daylight filters weakly through the mist, the outlines of houses, barns, and old shops emerge like ghostly silhouettes. Windows gape like dark eyes, some cracked or broken, others intact but opaque with age and frost. Figures appear at the edges of vision, drifting across streets, standing silently in doorways or vanishing when approached. The presence of these figures leaves a mark, a prickling awareness that lingers in the mind long after the eyes have looked away. Whispers carry along the streets, carried by the wind, yet they do not always originate from any visible source. Some speak of hearing faint laughter echoing through empty squares, or the subtle scrape of footsteps against cobblestones and wooden boards. The sounds are intermittent, unidentifiable, yet undeniably human in tone. Visitors feel as though the village itself is attempting to communicate, or perhaps merely reminding them that they are never truly alone here. Doors open slowly without human touch, swinging wide to reveal empty interiors filled with dust and shadows. The air inside carries an oppressive weight, almost tangible, pressing against visitors as they move through abandoned hallways. Furniture stands askew as if recently used, yet no footprints disturb the thick layers of dust. In kitchens and parlors, mirrors fog without reason, and faint shapes can sometimes be glimpsed in the reflective surfaces, vanishing when observed directly. The village square is a central point of eerie activity. Rusting lampposts flicker on despite broken wiring. The sound of a distant bell rings faintly in the fog, though no tower stands to house it. Shadows gather and disperse without form or logic, and some visitors swear they have seen entire figures pass through the square only to dissolve into mist. The effect is disorienting, creating a sense that Whispering Hollow is less a collection of buildings and more a living organism, guiding perception and movement along its streets. Narrow alleyways and side paths twist between the old homes, amplifying the fog and muffling footsteps. Shapes appear in the corner of the eye, standing or moving in silence, yet vanish when confronted. The sensation of being watched grows, and some visitors feel icy hands graze their skin or a sudden, inexplicable chill across their shoulders. The village seems attentive, aware of each step, each glance, as if measuring or cataloging the presence of the living within its domain. Abandoned churches, schools, and shops stand as silent sentinels, their interiors dark and heavy with time. Sometimes, the faint sound of movement is heard within, as though unseen occupants wander from room to room. Windows reveal fleeting glimpses of figures, often peering outward only to vanish when approached. Whispers emanate from these structures, soft and fragmented, carrying a cadence that suggests intent and awareness rather than random sound. The edges of the village blur into the surrounding forest, where the fog thickens and forms phantom shapes among the trees. Visitors who wander too far from the streets report distant calls, echoes of their own names, or the faint laughter of something unseen. The boundaries of Whispering Hollow are elusive, blending human habitation with natural enclosure, making escape feel gradual, as if the village stretches itself outward to retain its visitors within its mist-laden grip. Nightfall intensifies the experience. Shadows lengthen and merge with fog, creating forms that seem sentient. The street lamps flicker and die, leaving some areas in near-complete darkness. Doors swing open or close without warning, and the whispers grow slightly louder, carrying a sense of purpose. Figures appear briefly at windows or corners, vanishing as though swallowed by the air itself. The village pulses with quiet life, a rhythm undetectable yet profoundly felt. Those who leave Whispering Hollow often carry a lasting impression of the village's presence. Some report seeing shapes in peripheral vision long after departing, or hearing faint echoes of laughter in quiet spaces. Others describe a persistent feeling of eyes upon them, a sensation that the village continues to watch, remembering, and perhaps waiting. Whispering Hollow exists as a threshold, a place between the living and the unseen, where time, space, and perception bend, leaving an enduring sense of wonder and unease. Every step to the village is a journey into uncertainty. The fog, the whispers, and the fleeting figures create an atmosphere both captivating and disquieting. Visitors leave changed, marked by the subtle interactions of a place that never truly sleeps, where every shadow holds memory, and every sound is a reminder that some villages are never fully abandoned. Whispering Hollow endures as a living mystery, a domain of fog, shadow, and quiet, observing all who enter, and shaping the experience of the living in ways that defy explanation. Thank you for walking with me through Washington's haunted forest villages tonight. The fog hides more than trees and paths. It hides stories of the restless, the forgotten, and the lost. Every shadow could be a soul unwilling to move on. Every whisper might be a warning. If you ever find yourself walking among the mist, listen carefully, watch for shadows, and remember, you are never truly alone. Sleep cautiously tonight, if you can.